Let's get peppy. Welcome to PEP 178. That's PEP or Planet Extra podcast. It's an offshoot of Planet America on ABC Australia, which you can see on Wednesdays at 9:30 p.m. on ABC TV and 8 p.m. on Fridays on ABC News, or anytime you like on iView or Facebook at ABC Planet America, or on YouTube on the ABC News In-Depth channel. On PEP, we cover all the stuff that's too nerdy for TV. If you're listening to us, you can also find PEP on YouTube and Facebook, where you'll also find timestamps and show notes in the blurb. You'll find so much. And if you leave a comment under those videos, we are likely, definitely going to see it, as long as you leave it in the first week after the video. You can also tweet us at PEPCHASDRDAVE. That's at PepChazDrDave. If you want to contact me privately, you can ask me on Twitter there, and I'll allow you to direct message or email me, or you can just direct message me on Facebook if you like. But for now, let's meet the man who never raises the stakes on inconsequential views ever. They're talking about Dr. Pepper himself. That's Dr. David Smith. Hello, Dave.
Hello, everyone. I'm David Smith. I'm an associate professor at the United States Study Centre at the University of Sydney. But let me stress, I do not speak for either of those institutions on this podcast. Both of those institutions, in fact, have their own podcasts.
That really?
Yes.
So should I be insulted that I've never been asked to appear on any of those podcasts?
Well, I mean, I am on the US Study Centre one sometimes.
Really?
Yeah,
I've never. Good? Do you recycle material?
No, I don't recycle. Sometimes between this and the Chaser Report, but no, not between this and the US Study Centre podcast. Yeah. I've never been on the University of Sydney one. Like the Vice Chancellor's podcast is called The Solutionists, and I'm pretty confident that I've never offered a solution to anything. So I don't ever expect to be on that one. But my point is, that's where you can get the views of those institutions. You will not find them here.
Sure. You got a little bit too much vice for the Vice Chancellor's podcast. We are recording this on a Thursday afternoon. You'll be surprised to hear, given that I'm going to be putting this out the usual time on Friday very late. This is Thursday at 4:30 p.m. We're recording this. So we don't know anything that happened on Thursday night or Thursday in America.
No.
We're basically, effectively, this is the day after the debate. So we'll be doing a lot of debate talk.
Yes, we will.
And I am less prepared than usual because of when we're recording this, which means we're probably going to go a little bit short. Well, I say short. It's still going to be long.
2.5 hours.
Yeah, we'll probably go 2:20, 2:30, something like that. And then I will leave half an hour for policy time because there's been so much policy and I don't want to leave it 2 or 3 weeks till we get to the policy. Dave, what are you grateful for?
What I'm grateful for is Patricia Highsmith. Mm-hmm. So I have just come back from a conference in the US. It's a very long flight from Sydney to Dallas and Dallas to Sydney. But Patricia Highsmith's first 2 Ripley novels kept me very good company all the way. These are just fantastic books. She was a fantastic writer. One of the things that I love about her is she is so misanthropic. Like
you would love that.
She really just hates all of her characters. So Talented Mr. Ripley, which has had numerous very good adaptations, but they all have to do it in different ways. And the 1999 one with Matt Damon and Gwyneth Paltrow, directed by Anthony Minghella, the character of Marge was very sympathetically portrayed by Gwyneth Paltrow, which is, that's the demands of the medium of film. Not so the novel. Patricia Highsmith, through the character of Ripley, clearly just has nothing but contempt for this character who is idiotic and gormless. And that's the way that she sees most of her own characters. And for crime fiction, I think that's a real asset.
I thought you were going to say she showed nothing but contempt for Gwyneth Paltrow, and I thought, wow, just to inject Gwyneth Paltrow hatred into your book is really harsh.
I'm sure if she'd been alive at the same time as Gwyneth Paltrow, she would have hated her because she hated everybody. She was famous for once bringing to a party a handbag full of lettuce and 300 snails and saying, "These are my guests for the evening."
I love that you know that.
Yeah. Thanks, Wikipedia.
I'll tell you what, but you say thanks, Wikipedia, but you looked up Patricia Highsmith on Wikipedia.
That's true.
That's pretty cool.
Yes.
What I'm grateful for is Safe Streets. Now, that's something which you probably haven't heard of. It's a program in Baltimore. And it's an anti-crime program, which is quite unusual. What they do is they deploy participants to the most violent parts of Baltimore. Anyone who's watched The Wire knows there are some very violent parts of Baltimore.
Yeah.
And when these people see a shooting about to take place, they get in the way.
Wow.
That's what they do. They try to mediate. They just get in there. They're not armed. They're not strong. They have no protection whatsoever.
Yep.
That's the point. They get right in the middle of them and they, with an orange shirt, an ugly orange shirt, and they try to mediate the shooting directly before it happens. That is pretty brave stuff.
That's very brave.
And unsurprisingly, this has only been around for a couple of years and 5 of them have been killed. But they also seem to have won a lot of people's respect and admiration, as you might expect, including the gang members.
Yes.
And so there are less deaths from amongst the Safe Streets program now than there were originally.
Yep.
But yeah, it's still obviously very dangerous.
Yes, yeah.
And they may be having an effect. 3 of the 10 Safe Streets locations that have been around for the last year marked a year recently without a single homicide.
Wow.
3 out of the 10. And you might go, whoopee-doo. But in Baltimore, there's a lot of homicides.
Yeah, yeah.
It's one of them, unfortunately, just had another one. The other 2 are keeping their streak going so far. Just also on that note, I should say, I've studied a lot on gun violence because of for obvious reasons in America when you need to know about this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And I can't emphasize enough. I don't have the stats in my head at the moment, but I can't emphasize enough how concentrated the number of gun deaths in each city are.
Yes.
Like when you talk about Chicago, you're talking like 4 blocks.
Yes, yeah.
Like it is amazing how so much of the city is actually just as safe as European cities, Australian cities, whatever.
Yeah, totally.
But then you just got these areas that are just super, super dangerous.
Yes.
And so anything that can help out 15 blocks or 20 blocks or whatever, that can solve the entire gun problem in the city. So anyway, the reason I said they may be working, not they are working, is because shootings are falling across the board everywhere.
Yes. Yeah.
In a lot of locations, right? Even though Trump pretends they're not, they are. So you can't be 100% sure what's causing the drop in a particular city, right? But we do know that there has been a 20% drop in gun violence in just the neighborhoods when Safe Streets begin operating in those neighborhoods. So they do appear to be doing something. That's a good sign. And Baltimore has had less than 300 murders last year for the first time since 2015. And as of last week, so we're now into September.
Yeah.
135 homicides this year so far and 282 shootings compared to last year when there were 191 homicides at this point in time and 447 shootings. So that's a big step down.
Yeah.
Once again, I'm sure it's not entirely because of Safe Streets, but these brave people, I think, are helping.
Yep.
The whole program only costs $7 million a year, so it's super efficient as well. Mayor Brandon Scott is looking to expand it to more locations. He's trying to basically deploy it on every single dodgy corner in Baltimore. So we'll see how that goes. Good luck to them. I think that's super impressive stuff. I'm grateful for them.
Yeah. Speaking of corners, I highly recommend the book The Corner by David Simon and Ed Burns. David Simon was the writer of The Wire. The Corner was also made into an HBO series before The Wire, so it's like the prequel to it. But fans of The Wire will recognize things that are very familiar. But it is a non-fiction book. It's a year of journalism on street corners in Baltimore. It's very good.
And this is in the book list now?
This is in the book list now. Yeah.
Fantastic. You can see the book list underneath our videos. Correspondences, quite a lot of them. I'm not going to get through them all.
Okay.
There's so much to talk about.
Yes.
First of all, Lichtman correspondence. Anthony writes, on Play America, you talked about Nate Silver's election prediction, but you didn't talk about Alan Lichtman's prediction. Now, we're going to get to Nate Silver's election prediction later on. But let's get to Alan Lichtman's prediction right now, because he made his official prediction. We've talked about him before. I went in quite a lot of depth about Alan Lichtman on Alan Lichtman on PEP 159. If you're interested, you can go back and have a look there. But there's been a few requests for us to deal with Alan Lichtman, and I do want to add something based on the update that he's just put out his latest prediction for Kamala Harris versus Donald Trump.
Yep.
And his prediction is that he's saying that Kamala Harris has 8 keys out of 13.
Okay.
So she should comfortably win the election, according to Alan Lichtman. And you can see, if you go back to PEP 159, why I have not a lot of respect for his model.
Yep.
But as a general rule of thumb, I'm just not a fan of these fundamentals models, which have no they have no reference whatsoever to anything that has happened or any person that exists the year of the election.
I am going to talk about this later
Oh,
on.
are you?
Or, do,
Okay,
or do
right.
you want me to talk about it now?
No. We'll do it all in good time. That's
Yeah,
all
yeah,
right.
yeah.
That's all
Because I actually think there is something valuable about these models.
right. Okay, well, let me put to you this. And,
Yes.
And you can take this up when you
Yes.
talk about
Yeah,
this.
yeah.
Alan Lichtman's 8 keys
Yes.
for that Kamala Harris
Yeah,
will
yeah.
get. I want you to just think, for example, if the Democrats decided to nominate my dog Mercury instead of Kamala Harris, would my dog Mercury get all these 8 keys? They are no primary contest. Yes. Mercury's got 1. No strong third party. Yes. Mercury's got 2 keys. Strong short-term economy, which means no recession. Yes, he's got 3 keys. Strong long-term economy, which means real GDP growth must be at least equal to the average of the past 2 terms. Yes, that's right. Mercury's got 4 keys. Major policy change. That's all the stuff that Biden did. Mercury gets credit for it. Thank you. 5 keys. No social unrest. He doesn't count the the Gaza protests. So that's 6 keys to Mercury. No scandal. Mercury, he's a very good boy. No scandal there. Uncharismatic challenger. He counts Trump as uncharismatic. I count Trump as charismatic, but not to me, but to a lot of people. He disagrees. Lichtman disagrees. Well done, Mercury. And major foreign policy / military success. I can't believe this, but Lichtman counts the Ukraine resistance as a major foreign policy / military success. Whatever. It's his system. 8 keys for Mercury. Now, admittedly, Mercury is a very, very good boy, but I don't think he should be elected president if the Democrats nominated him, but Alan Lichtman thinks he would be.
Okay. So I think his model is particularly bad because there are so many really subjective judgment calls in the keys. I am, though, actually going to speak in defense of forecasting models which deliberately ignore everything that happens either 12 months or 4 months before the election. There is actually, I would argue, more value in those than there is in Nate Silver's model.
Sure.
Yep.
Okay, well, I'm not saying Nate Silver's model is the number 1 model.
Yeah.
But I'm looking forward to hearing that, Dave. That's a good tease.
Yes.
The biggest topic of correspondence from the last 2 weeks, though, is without doubt the fact that you play Civ. I'm not going to go through them all. You all know who you are.
Yes.
But there are many variations on who do you play.
Okay. So, I've been playing this for 30 years. At the moment, I am playing Gitaja, the leader of the Indonesians. It's the perfect melding of faith and naval power, which appeals to me quite a lot.
Yeah.
I would say that my all-time favorite leader was in Civilization 5, which I think was the best installment of the game. That was Maria Theresa of the Austro-Hungarians, because she could do diplomatic marriage with allied city-states that could make her incredibly powerful in a relatively short period of time. But what I want to say, because I've seen all of these correspondences, Chaz showed them to me. The central thing about the game is that you can play it in so many different ways. And all the way back in the Civ 1 days, I remember we had a substitute history teacher in high school, an old guy who came in. And he didn't really teach us any history, but he's like, who here plays Civilization? And a lot of us did. And he said, the thing I really like about the game is you can impose your own morality on it. And that is absolutely true. It remains true to this day. And his example was, I never negotiate with thieves. Now, my morality within the game is a bit different. By the end of any game, 75% of my economy is based on theft. But the point remains that you can really play it any way that you want, and that's incredibly appealing. One of the correspondents said, every second trans person I know plays this game.
Yes.
Now, I can't I'm not a trans person. I can't speak for trans people. But this game is very much about taking charge of your own identity. That even though you are taking on the role of this historical character who was an actual person who had an actual life, who did things, you can take them in whatever direction you want, and you've got to deal with whatever the game throws at you. But nonetheless, it really is very much a game about creating and controlling your own identity. And which is appealing not just to trans people, but to a lot of people. And it's one of the great things about the game is that you can, as this history teacher said, you impose your own morality on it.
That's really interesting. One more question along these lines.
Yes.
From Danlin Music, the Tangent Treehouse Sting creator.
Yes.
He asked, I was very grateful for Sid Meier's colonization game,
a
predecessor to the Civilization series,
Yeah.
which ended after one version as the player would colonize the Americas by inevitably wiping out Indian tribes and destroying the other nation colonizers. Did Dr. Dave ever enjoy that game?
I certainly did play that in the mid-90s, and I enjoyed it. There was also a game where you could go into the DOS files and mess around with them and change the names and stuff, which was always a lot of fun. I would recommend to everybody who loves Sid Meier's Memoir, which came out last year, and which talks about, so if you're looking for answers about like why there was never another colonization game, why there was never a sequel to Pirates, you will find the answers in that book. Yeah, so the Sid Meier's Memoir is also on the reading list.
Oh, wow. Okay. This is a big pep for the reading list.
Yeah, big day for the reading list. By the way, if you are playing Getaja of Indonesia, the city-states that you must not let go of are Auckland, Cardiff, Mogadishu, and Valletta. Okay? you keep those four, you are going to win.
For those who are listening who are thoroughly confused, I have joined you. I got no idea what he just said, but I'm sure that will mean a lot to many of our correspondents.
Yes.
Another correspondent is Biden liar correspondence from Oxysource. Oh my God.
What?
I've been forgetting to do this.
Hey!
We got a correspondence thing, Dave.
I didn't even know that.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah. Hey!
I thought you were going to say I just realised we weren't recording.
No. I've just been doing correspondence for 15 minutes with no sting. There we go. Okay, so this is a Biden liar correspondence.
Okay.
From Oxysaurus. Sorry, Chaz. Saying that Biden... Okay, what we're referring to here, I should say, is I said at one point in time that I thought Biden was was a strong second as far as prolific liars go.
Okay.
Like where Trump is number one in terms of presidents who are liars. I said that Biden was, if Trump didn't exist, Biden would be the number one liar in my lifetime as far as presidents go. And we had a few people disagree with this. Oxysaurus said, sorry, Chaz, saying that Biden is second to Trump for dishonesty is just nuts. All politicians lie. Definitely. However, Trump can lie like no one else, lie about nothing, lie even inconsequential stuff like a fire hose. The sheer volume of lies he can spout is just awe-inspiring. Not sure anyone could remotely compare the two with a straight face. Okay, so let me just be very specific here. I'm in no way suggesting that Joe Biden holds a candle to Donald Trump as a liar.
Yeah.
Donald Trump is number one with a bullet. Like, it's just not even close. But if Donald Trump never existed, I would say Biden would be a comfortable number one out of every president and presidential nominee from a major party I can remember. And my memory starts with George H.W. Bush. Okay, so think from 1989 basically through to now. Think of all the Romneys and McCains and Hillary Clinton, Bill Clinton even, who at the time was considered quite the liar. All those people, I think Joe Biden is a much more prolific liar than any of them. I don't know what you think, Dave. Do you agree or disagree?
Well, it depends on how you're measuring lies.
Yeah.
Because, okay, maybe volume, maybe like sheer number of them.
I'm talking volume.
Okay. Because if you're looking at the biggest lies told, I think George W. Bush has everyone except Trump pretty much licked in our lifetime.
Yeah, he has a lot of death.
Yes.
As I said with his lies.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, that's fair enough. I'm just talking about in terms of volume. I'm talking about just the sheer number of biographical details he makes up, that kind of stuff, right?
Yes.
A lot of them are just silly, but they're still lies.
Yeah, I don't know. I need to see some solid research on this.
Fair enough.
Yes.
Unfortunately, as I said to one of the people who was protesting this,
yeah.
there is no data on lying from before Trump because fact checkers didn't bother to track that kind of
Congratulations,
stuff.
Trump. You've created a field.
So, yes, I mean, this is just off my memory. I have no evidence of this.
Yep.
But I just want to be clear that I reckon for every lie Biden tells, Trump tells at least 3.
Yeah.
Like Trump is, and by the way, Trump's bullshit is even more prolific than his lying.
Yeah.
When I say bullshit, I mean opinions that he expresses. They're not facts; they're opinions, but no one could possibly believe it. Like, it's including him. Like, it's a stream of just bullshit.
Harry Frankfurt, the philosopher who wrote On Bullshit, said the distinction between bullshit and lies is the liar knows that they're lying and they're doing it for a reason. The bullshitter is just completely indifferent to the truth value of what they're saying.
Yeah, which I think is an accurate way of putting it.
Yes, yeah.
But anyway, so I just want to be clear to those who were just outraged by me. I wasn't comparing Joe Biden to Donald Trump.
Yeah.
I was comparing Joe Biden to everyone else.
Okay.
Trump's on his own. Kamala Harris headphones correspondence. I played a grab of Kamala Harris seemingly, I said, avoiding the press by walking up on the plane with a headphone attached to her, an earphone attached to her phone. And then she put her phone to her other ear as well at the same time, which I was going, what is this? This is not very convincing. Like, I can't talk. I've got the phone and an earphone on at the same time. I noted the clip doing the rounds of that, and I said that's quite unfortunate. The Peppers didn't like my take at all. Stuart says she's using the hand that was holding the phone to push her earplug back in her ear. Bad journalism. He's referring to me. Liz says she's put the non-phone hand to her ear, then the phone in the other. It's a typical I'm trying to hear something in front of a jet move. Don't guys do that to block jet/wind noise? She just got out of a quiet car. Why make up a weird story when a simple one's more likely? Someone else whose name I lost gave me another likely explanation. She's been a boomer. Lol. And my favorite, Verath, gave a lot of very technical, scientific sounding explanations.
Yeah.
And then finished with less speculation, more disappointing, complicating detail, which I thought should be a t-shirt. That's great. I love that, Verath. I think you guys are right. I think I got sucked in.
Oh, Chaz.
Look,
it does sound like a clip that would be worth about 6 hours on Fox News.
Yeah, look, I make a point of wading through everything that gets sent around from all people and various partisans, try and make calls on what I buy, what I don't buy. I bought that one.
Round, get around. It gets sent around.
That's right.
Chaz will look at it. Woo!
That's the closest we're ever going to get to hearing Dave sing. I love it. Look, I bought it. I'm now selling it at a loss. Okay, you're right. I'm wrong. I concede. Biden watch correspondence. A lot of the explanations coming in for this. This is about Biden looking at his watch 13 times allegedly.
Jesus, what do you do when I'm not here?
We talk about stuff, though. we do content when you're not here. This is the Afghanistan 13, right?
Yeah.
Their parents, I said one of the reasons why I think their parents hate Biden so much is because when their bodies were being carried off the plane,
right.
But according to the parents, Biden looked at his watch every single time one of them came off the plane. And they were quite angry about that.
Okay.
Where's he got to be? Why is he in such a rush? A lot of explanations came in for that. People clearly were uncomfortable with the idea that Biden could be so indifferent to people receiving their dead children. Some suggested it might be a nervous tick. Some suggested he might be receiving their names on an Apple Watch. He doesn't strike me as an Apple Watch kind of guy, Joe Biden, but who knows? I can't know for sure. I personally didn't buy either of those options. Liz, however, came up with an option that I think is buyable.
What's that?
Which is, she said, quote, from what I can find out, Biden wears Bo's rosary on his wrist next to his watch.
Oh.
I checked a few pics which seemed to back that up. By the way, Liz, so did I. He definitely has the rosary beads just above his watch. She then says, it makes more sense for that to be true. And then talking about Bo, because he'd been thinking about him every time, then him, rather than him not caring, which seems out of character. Because I said that he also just talked about Bo Biden to these parents as well. Adriana agreed with that. Michael agreed as well. Michael said, I find the rosary scenario more likely than checking his watch every time a body is presented. Nobody checks their watch with that kind of regularity. So look, I think that's definitely a potential explanation. All I would say, though, two things. Firstly, draw your attention to the video, which I'll play over the top of this, where he is turning his wrist in a way that would suggest he's looking at a clock face, but not necessarily. He could be looking at a particular part of the rosary beads.
Yeah.
Secondly, that story was quite big at the time for a couple of days there. Like they testified in Congress about this. And I find it odd that the White House would not have mentioned this at the time if that was the case. I know they're not great at communication, the Biden White House.
Yeah.
Why wouldn't they tell the parents at the very least if the parents are furious at them about this? Seems odd to me that they wouldn't say anything, but maybe it's just terrible communication. I'm not sure, but I just want to float that is a credible other explanation. You guys can decide for yourselves.
He could have avoided all of this by wearing a Flava Flav clock around his neck.
Then it'd be very clear.
And then, but then he'd be sort of looking down every time, and which is a gesture of mourning.
Yeah, like he's praying.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a solution.
That would have been a dignified solution.
I know Biden's a pepper. So Biden, take note.
Yeah.
Flava Flav clock now, please, to solve all your problems. Let's get into first bit of content, which is off correspondence, Dave.
Okay.
It's a part 2 of something we did last week, which was we talked about sanewashing.
Oh,
and
right,
this has become an even bigger issue this week.
Yes.
Our timing was perfect.
Okay.
Sanewashing, for those who don't know, is the idea that news writers, when describing what Trump does, make him seem significantly more normal and orthodox than he actually is.
Yes.
And so they give most people a false impression of what Trump is like from their description, because those people aren't going to be looking at raw footage. They'll be reading about him in the New York Times or an AP. So, for example, what I said last week, because I gave an example of Trump saying this at one of his Q&As.
But the transgender thing is incredible. Think of it. Your kid goes to school and comes home a few days later with an operation. The school decides what's going to happen with your child. And, many of these childs 15 years later say, what the hell happened? Who did this to me?
Okay, so that's obviously insane, him suggesting schools are somehow responsible for operations on children. You're lucky to get a Band-Aid in a school these days, but anyway, without parents' written permission. But anyway, so that's nuts. But the New York Times reported that with the headline, that whole Q&A, with the headline, conservative mums charmed by Trump would rather avoid his misogyny. And they didn't even mention that particular exchange from Trump there. It was just a cute little article, didn't mention that moment. Another great example came this week, an even better example. Trump spoke to the Economic Club of New York, and he gave, in my view, possibly the dumbest answer of his entire political career.
Wow.
And he's had some dumb answers.
Yes.
Okay, so enjoy.
If you win in November, can you commit to prioritizing legislation to make childcare affordable? And if so, what specific piece of legislation will you advance?
Well, I would do that, and we're sitting down. I was we had Senator Marco Rubio, and my daughter Ivanka was so impactful on that issue. It's a very important issue. But I think when you talk about the kind of numbers that I'm talking about, that, because look, childcare is childcare. There's something, you have to have it. In this country, you have to have it. But when you talk about those numbers compared to the kind of numbers that I'm talking about by taxing foreign nations at levels that they're not used to, but they'll get used to it very quickly. And it's not going to stop them from doing business with us, but they'll have a very substantial tax when they send product into our country. Those numbers are so much bigger than any numbers that we're talking about, including childcare, that it's going to take care. We're going to have, I look forward to having no deficits within a fairly short period of time, coupled with the reductions that I told you about on waste and fraud and all of the other things that are going on in our country. because I have to stay with childcare. I want to stay with childcare, but those numbers are small relative to the kind of economic numbers that I'm talking about, including growth, but growth also headed up by what the plan is that I just told you about. We're going to be taking in trillions of dollars, and as much as child care is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in. We're going to make this into an incredible country that can afford to take care of its people, and then we'll worry about the rest of the world. Let's help other people. But we're going to take care of our country first. This is about America first. It's about make America great again. We have to do it because right now we're a failing nation. So we'll take care of it. Thank you.
Not only am I not sure that Trump understands any of his own economic policies, I'm not sure he even knows what childcare is. That was just such rubbish.
Yes.
And so that happened. And if I was reporting about that, I'd say Trump was saying that he would pay for his entire deficit plus have more than enough money left over for free childcare through his tariffs. And then I would note that that's an impossibility.
Yes.
Because his budget black hole alone is estimated at being between $4 and $8 trillion over 10 years. And even if he placed a 20% tariff on all imports and that didn't decrease the number of imports, which of course it would, he would only raise $600 billion. So that's not even close to paying for any of this. Now, what I just did then when I said that,
yes,
that was sanewashing.
It was.
Like, because even though what I described him as saying was dumb, it wasn't nearly as dumb as what he actually said. So he sounded like a fifth grader bluffing through a class report on a book he hadn't read.
Yes.
So this is how the New York Times summarized that section. After his speech, Donald Trump was asked how he might address rising childcare costs. In a jumbled answer, he said he would prioritize legislation on the issue, but offered no specifics and insisted that his other economic policies, including tariffs, would take care of childcare. As much as childcare is talked about as being expensive, it's relatively speaking not very expensive compared to the kind of numbers we'll be taking in, he said, quote. That's sanewashing. What do you think, Dave?
Okay. So sanewashing is a structural problem when it comes to Trump. Certainly, I think that there are times when the New York Times could make better decisions about exactly what it reports, like with the Moms for Liberty thing. But sanewashing, for the most part, it's not even so much about those judgments. The problem is that all of the things that reporters and journalists do, summarizing, explaining, these are things that involve making things understandable.
Yeah.
Right? It's your responsibility as a journalist or a reporter to take the material that you're given and to make it understandable. So the structural problem with Trump is that you are making, or you're trying to make gibberish understandable. If you're not doing that, if you're doing stenography, and I mean, I saw Parker Malloy's piece about this, and he said, "Look, we have a responsibility as readers. Let's go back to the primary." She said, "Let's go back to the primary sources." That's a significant burden to put on readers and viewers. Let's go back and just look at hours and hours of raw, unfiltered Trump gibberish.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I think sanewashing is a problem because I think that articles that summarize things that Trump says with the intention of making them understandable don't communicate how bad they are, don't communicate how insane they are. But there is no easy solution to this problem because if you're not trying to make things understandable, that's your job as a journalist or reporter. And sure, you can editorialize a lot about how insane this is, but there are physical limits in media to how much you can actually report on. You've got a few hundred words at most to communicate what you've done. So while I think I'm on board with people who say this is a problem, at the same time, I don't think it's going to be rectified by journalists just making better choices. It could only be rectified by journalists or reporters ceasing to be journalists or reporters, ceasing to pursue the aim of making things understandable, of translating things into terms that people can understand. And I don't think that the the alternative of let's just all watch all of this unfiltered Trump all the time, I don't think that's one that most people are going to accept.
I think that's a really good thought what you've just said there, and we didn't say that at all last week. So that's I'm really glad you added that. That's really good. And I should say, I do that. Everyone does this for everything.
Yes,
like I do that for the correspondence.
Yeah.
I fill it out the abuse. I fill it out if someone makes a crap point and a good point, I won't mention the crap point. I'll steel man what they're saying for efficiency and for interest.
Yes, yeah.
And for communication purposes. You know, so that's just normal. I know these people aren't running for president, but it's just that's just a standard method by which people communicate.
Yes, yeah.
I totally get that. I just what we did say, and I'll because I want to throw in some correspondence here on this. I was a bit dismissive of the Sanewashing thing last week. I was saying that people already know exactly what Trump is like anyway, and something the New York Times writes now is not going to make any difference at all. And I don't think inserting an extra paragraph in a 23-paragraph story is going to make a difference. Richie also said there's also a problem of the opposite. People treating Trump as being serious when he's not being serious. He said that happens a lot as well. And Melissa responded to that. She said, sorry, Melissa was saying, yes, that's Melissa. She said, I felt Richard's spin that Trump is often just joking with his bizarre digressions and they are therefore not particularly relevant to be reported. If that's the case, then the complete lack of seriousness should be considered disqualifying. Richard might think Trump is joking, but the fact that an enormous number of his supporters are subsequently interviewed or put posts on social media make it clear that they think what Trump has said is the truth. Then there is a major disconnect here, and surely it's up to the media to help the public understand. I just want to make clear that there was a bit of confusion there because Richie was talking about the joking thing in the middle of us talking about this, but he was actually talking about something else. He wasn't talking about the transgender thing.
Okay.
He was talking about stuff like the shark story.
Yes, yeah.
The electric boat shark story, where Trump is clearly not being serious. He's screwing around. And people treat it as if it's like for him, it's a great philosophical question. You know, like this. That's what Richie was referring to. So I think you're actually on the same page there, Melissa. But then she goes on to say, his speeches seem fixate on weird peripheral things. They have no meaning for the lives of voters and usually lists strings of his personal grievances. If the New York Times publishes a story related to a couple of lines he uttered about policy, but ignore the unhinged rhetoric, the whining about injustices, the vitriol and the conspiracy theories, then they are most definitely doing the public a disservice. And yes, Sanewashing. Ilya added to that. Ilya said, if I stand on stage and sensibly discuss economic policy while simultaneously murdering a bunny rabbit, it would be absurd for a journalist to focus on my tax proposals in a subsequent write-up. A choice is being made about what the public needs to see, and in these cases, they are hiding the truth from the public. Yes, occasionally Trump says something of substance, but it's always surrounded by so many objectively disqualifying things, it's irresponsible to not focus on them. To be clear, any summary of a Biden speech that didn't highlight his inability to both start and finish a sentence would be similarly culpable. Do you have a response to that?
Well, I mean, most summaries of Biden speeches didn't emphasize that. Yeah, so I think, as I say, I agree that it's a serious problem. I just don't see a serious solution.
Yeah.
And this is why I have never been on the Solutionists podcast. I mean, Trump and Biden to some extent as well when he had really lost it. Both of them, they do pose unique challenges for reporters who are trying to communicate what it is that they've said. And yes, I think there are some times when they could make better judgments about what they choose to present. But you're going to have to make those judgments. There's a lot of stuff you're going to have to leave out. If you choose to leave out all of the sane stuff, that's also potentially doing a disservice. So I mean, I really sympathize with the points that they're making. At the same time, I do sympathize with people who are struggling to actually do their jobs when it comes to reporting on things that Trump has said.
I sympathize too. And all I would say to people is if you want to criticize the New York Times, I've got plenty of criticisms for the New York Times, by the way. But if you want to criticize the way they write about a speech, just ask yourself, what would your headline be? What would your lead be?
Yeah.
And to still appear to be a credible journalist.
Right, yes.
So you can't just sit there and just and just do propaganda.
Yeah.
You need to sound like you're giving a proper description,
Yes,
a proper neutral description.
Yeah.
So how would you phrase it? How would you phrase it in a way that didn't make you seem nuts?
Yes.
It's sometimes, I'm not saying you can't, I'm just saying it's not as easy as you think till you sit down.
Yeah.
It's not as easy as you think. You just sit down and try and do it yourself.
Yes.
It's not easy. What I would say, the solution, to the extent that there's a solution, Dave,
Yep.
and I should have said this last week, I didn't have the time, so I just
Yes.
moved on.
Yeah.
You can write more than one piece.
You can.
We're talking about newswire writers here.
Yes.
Their job is just to give a super summary of what happened.
Yeah, that's true.
Like a 2-hour speech, they're supposed to write 15 paragraphs. That's going to miss out a lot.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? That's fine. And I think there's a role for those pieces,
Yes.
but it's not the entire newspaper.
Yeah.
Like you should have, that, but then you should have companion pieces. You should have analysis pieces that point out important things that weren't mentioned in the newswire piece, like the fact he's nuts.
Yes.
Like the fact that childcare policy policy response was insane. Like that's why you have analysis pieces for
Yes.
exactly that kind of thing. And you know what? I got no problems with quote boxes. Like there's more than one way to skin a cat. You can, don't skin a cat, okay? We'll get onto that. Don't do that, no matter which town you're in. but yeah, you can have, like, let's be creative in the way we cover people, but that doesn't mean you have to reinvent newswire pieces.
Yes.
There are you can have companion items.
Yes.
So that's what I would say.
Yep.
One more correspondence on this from Not AI Much, which is kind of related, but sort of, I think we misunderstood each other.
Yeah.
Not AI Much says, so when Trump says they're doing transgender surgery at schools in America, that shouldn't be fact-checked? Let's look at other things we shouldn't fact-check. Maybe we shouldn't fact-check January 6th. He said there was no violence. We should just leave it at that. Oh, yeah. The election was stolen. That's a good joke. We shouldn't fact check that one, hey? Mexico's going to pay to build the wall. China's going to absorb the cost of the tariffs. None of that should be reported on because, jokes. The thing that you miss is that all this crazy stuff is him testing the water. He will refine it until he thinks he has something that will work for the people he is targeting. He's not joking, he's testing. With Trump, he tells you his actual position straight away, usually in a semi-demented but highly dramatic style, so that people like you will go, oh, that's just Trump joking. He's not joking, he's testing. Okay. I think we misunderstood each other there because like I said, Richie was talking about other things when he was talking about joking, not the transgender thing. But I think your point is excellent, which is why I'm bringing it up now. The testing thing is 100% true. And we saw the perfect example of that with the grab I played before, the transgender one. You're right, Not AI Much. He was testing because a week later, he came out with a much worse version of the same grab.
Can you imagine you're a parent and your son leaves the house and you say, Jimmy, I love you so much. Go have a good day in school. And your son comes back with a brutal operation. Can you even imagine this?
Yes, you have to imagine it because it would never happen in the real world that Jimmy would leave and then come back with an operation.
I'm pretty sure this meme actually began in the Brazilian election in 2019, where some group that was doing propaganda for Bolsonaro were leaving pamphlet purporting to be from, I can't remember the name of Bolsonaro's opponent, purporting to say, we will decide the gender of your child at the age of 5 and you will have no say in it. And so I'm pretty sure that that's where this meme actually comes from.
There you go.
Yes.
Well, the interesting point about this is not only is Not AI Much right about the way Trump works, but that shows that Not AI Much is wrong about the Sanewashing in that you could not have had a clip sent around more than that transgender clip, that original transgender clip on the week. People are saying, oh, we need to draw attention to these things. That clip had attention drawn to it.
Yes.
It was all over the place in a way that a New York Times newswire piece does not match at all.
Yes, yeah.
And what did Trump do?
Mm-hmm.
He escalated it anyway.
Yes.
that proves that removing inverted commas sanewashing is not going to stop Trump from escalating his bullshit rhetoric.
Yes.
He's going to do it anyway.
Yes.
Which is not me saying we just give up. It's me saying the problem of Trump, of Trump rhetoric, is separate from the problem of the best way to communicate.
Yes.
In Newswire.
Yeah.
And the solution for that, like I said before, I think is with more and more varied pieces.
Yes.
I don't know what the solution is for Trump rhetoric. The solution for that is for him to retire. But blaming the New York Times for the transgender stuff, I don't think is right.
Yeah.
Because he's going to do it anyway, as we just demonstrated.
Yes. By the way, a few weeks ago, you may remember, I wrote a piece in The Conversation about Trump's comment about you're not going to have to vote again in another 4 years. Yeah. That originated as a joke that was then developed into something far more serious. So, yeah, Trump's jokes are often a lot more revealing than his, purportedly serious comments that he might read off a teleprompter. His jokes are where the substance actually is.
Okay, Dave, we've gotten, I don't know how much I'm going to edit out this first part, but because we went a bit too long. But let's say we're somewhere between 40 and 45 minutes into this podcast and we haven't even mentioned the debate.
We have not mentioned the debate.
Let's go.
Okay.
Tell me about the debate.
Let's start with the metadata of this debate. It was watched by 67.1 million people on TV, according to figures released today. That's 30% more than watched the Trump-Biden debate back in June. Yeah. And those are comparable numbers to the second Trump-Clinton debate in 2016 and I think the second Obama-Romney debate in 2012. So these are high numbers for a debate. So for people wondering what kind of impact it's going to have, well, we don't really know, but this is certainly a watch debate. And that doesn't include people who would have been, watching it on various streaming services or on social media or whatever.
Which is not a surprise given what happened in the first debate.
Yes. Yeah. So yes, this was a watch debate. Okay, so in terms of how the debate actually went, well, if you'll excuse my language, Harris gumbled Trump's bottersnike. She got the better of him at almost every point in the debate. She certainly had a couple of weak points. I was very frustrated by her first answer because the answer to the question, like, are Americans better off than they were 4 years ago? The way that you deal with that is take it literally. Are Americans better off now than they were in September 2020? Fuck yes. They are so much better off. Yeah. The unemployment rate was about 20% then. Yeah. As Trump constantly likes to tell people, there were riots going on, mass protests going on in a lot of American cities. People were dying at a rate of thousands a day during the COVID pandemic. At this point, she could have said all of this. She could have reminded people that U.S. citizen. Sorry, 2020 was basically the worst year that most people can remember. Are you better off than you were in 2020? Yeah, even the Trump campaign says, "Are you better off than you were in 2019?" Yeah. This is the year that they have tried to remove. Now
they've conceded.
Instead, she embarked on what was her weakest moment in the entire debate, which was talking about her economic plan. People have said she sounded very hesitant. Okay, so that was not good for her. But even then, when, this should have been Trump's golden opportunity to just really, score some major points on the economy issue, he immediately veers off into immigration. And in not a very convincing way either. So even when Harris gave Trump opportunities to claw some ground back, he just blew it every single time. What seems to be the unanimous consensus about what Trump's best moment was the last thing that he said in a debate, which was, she says she's going to do all this stuff. Why hasn't she already done it?
Shall I play it?
Yeah.
Okay.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it.
If that had been his first answer, could have been quite a different debate.
Yep.
But it wasn't his first answer because he was on the back foot right from the beginning. Even after a fairly weak first statement from Harris, he was on the back foot. I don't know why. And just from then on, it just completely went downhill until the last 30 seconds of the debate, which is like the least consequential part of the debate. So, just overall, it was a very clear victory to Harris. In terms of the substance of it, just having thought about this now for 24 hours, thinking who was Harris really communicating with in this debate, it seemed almost like she was trying to tailor it exactly to Nikki Haley primary voters. If that's any audience that she was looking to go for this stuff, because I can't imagine any Democrat invoking the support of Dick Cheney under any other circumstances. Like, she recognizes that Nikki Haley was getting 20 to 25% of the Republican primary votes in contests that Nikki Haley had already left. She recognizes that in this race, which is so close and where the polls just seem to be so stagnant, this is the group that could make the difference. Now, there are many people who would disagree with that theory of the election, but I think that this is what she was trying to do. She kept trying to remind these voters, no, you really don't like this man at all, and you really don't need to vote for him at all. I'm pretty safe. I'm pretty sane. You should follow that instinct and not vote for him, even though Nikki Haley has endorsed him. Those were my two big takeaways from the debate, that Harris really won it pretty clearly, and that's who she was really aiming at in this debate.
Okay, I'll start going on my little tracks, and you just jump in whenever you want.
Yep.
Okay, so I think that this debate, the context of this debate is that Kamala Harris had employed a media strategy of not engaging with the media very much.
Yes.
Which we'll talk about the polling a little bit later on, maybe. But in recent polls, it looked like things were starting to turn against her, just slightly. And Democrats, and I suspect the Harris campaign, were a little bit nervous about that, that maybe she wouldn't last the distance with this. And I think that this debate came just at that moment when people were starting to have some doubts. And I think something that she and a lot of people were concerned about was that Kamala Harris still hadn't been defined in the eyes of a number of voters. Yes. And that because she hadn't defined herself, because she hadn't done much media. And until recently, there wasn't a lot of policy either. So there wasn't much to define her. And so she was still open to being defined by Trump. It was obvious the definition Trump wanted to place on her, that she's extreme, a Marxist, all this kind of stuff, that she's just more of the same from Biden.
Yep.
She and her job in this debate, I felt, was to try to define herself in the way she wanted to be defined. So in that context, I thought that the thing that really stood out to me was just how much this is not new. Kamala Harris is disciplined. How much discipline and preparation she showcased.
Yes.
As contrasting with how little discipline and preparation Trump showcased, right? Now, Harris's team, they prepared for everything. They even got a smaller podium for her.
Yes.
So that on the TV shot, where it was the split screen of the two of them next to each other, they looked like they're the same size.
Yes. And can I just jump in on that?
Yeah.
This is the first time I've ever seen anyone visually master a debate with Trump.
Mm.
So Harris's facial expressions
Yep.
always seemed to be appropriate for what
Yes.
was going on, whereas Trump was frequently nodding when she was tearing shreds off him as if
Yeah.
he was agreeing with points. Yeah, she looked fresh.
Mm.
She looked like she was enjoying it.
Yep.
Trump did not look like either of those things.
She looked in control.
Yes,
And-
she absolutely looked in
And
control.
Trump looked angry and sour and defensive. He
Yes.
looked like he was losing.
Yes. And by the way, that point about the podium brings me to the most bizarre thing that anyone has said about this debate,
Yes.
because I've read a lot of hack commentary,
Yes.
which was when the New York Times got 14 different columnists to talk about it. And
Yeah.
Daniel C. McCarthy, who's the one who awarded the debate to Trump, said that by having a smaller podium, it just showed how small Harris is compared to Trump.
Well, that's dumb.
That's very dumb. First of all, it's a dumb thing to fixate on. Second, no, smaller podium makes you look bigger,
Yeah.
not smaller.
Like 95% of the coverage is a split screen.
Yes.
Where the two podiums are the same size, apparently. They
Yes.
seem to be the same size on the split screen.
Yes.
So it makes her look bigger.
Yeah.
That's a really dumb comment from them. Now the preparation, I'm going to go into a bit more detail, but there were times when it was a problem, and you've already cited one of them, which was
Yes.
the first answer.
Yeah.
It was so obvious to me. What I think was happening then
Mm-hmm.
was that they had internalized the fact that people thought they were a policy-free zone,
Yes.
and that Trump had been criticizing them for that,
Mhm.
and they wanted to come out hard with defining her as a person with a plan.
Yeah.
So she said in that first answer, I have a plan, like on this, a plan on that. And then for the rest of the debate, she used the phrase, I have a plan, probably 10 times.
Mm.
Like it was clearly something she was trying to emphasize. I have a plan.
Yeah.
The problem was the question was completely unsuited to this.
And they should have anticipated that would be the first question.
Well, look, I mean, maybe. I mean, it often is. It often is.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to bash them up for not knowing what the first question is going to be.
Mm.
But what I will say is that in the rest of the debate, Kamala Harris showed a lot more judgment
Yes.
in knowing what soundbite to use for what question.
Yeah.
But she is stuffed up.
Yeah.
Like she thought to herself, I've got to do this. This is my first
Yeah,
answer,
yeah.
regardless of what the question is. And it just didn't suit it all. I will play it now, and you'll see that for those who didn't watch the debate, or at least don't remember it, that it just clanged how badly her pre-prepared first answer mismatched with the actual question.
When it comes to the economy, do you believe Americans are better off than they were 4 years ago?
So I was raised as a middle-class kid, and I am actually the only person on this stage who has a plan that is about lifting up the middle class and working people of America. I believe in the ambition, the aspirations, the dreams of the American people. And that is why I imagine and have actually a plan to build what I call an opportunity economy. Because here's the thing. We know that we have a shortage of homes and housing, and the cost of housing is too expensive for far too many people. We know that young families need support to raise their children, and I intend on extending a tax cut for those families of $6,000, which is the largest child tax credit that we have given in a long time, so that those young families can afford to buy a crib, buy a car seat, buy clothes for their children. My passion, one of them, is small businesses. My mother raised my sister and me, but there was a woman who helped raise us. We call her our second mother. She was a small business owner. I love our small businesses. My plan is to give a $50,000 tax deduction to start-up small businesses, knowing they are part of the backbone of America's economy.
I've just played you guys the whole grab. Dave demanded I take it off because he was in pain. But I mean, you can see what was happening there.
Yes.
Like she thought, I've got to get some of these plans, especially the bit about the small business tax cut. She mentioned that at every opportunity.
Yes.
She clearly thought, I just have to get this out there. And this is where preparation worked against her.
Once again, appealing to Nikki Haley supporters.
Yeah.
Like, of all the things she's offering, what's the one that's going to appeal most to anti-Trump Republicans?
Yeah.
Small business tax cut.
Yeah, look, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
Yep.
But I think you're absolutely right about, apart from those early moments, the discipline that was displayed is going to be a substantive asset for her. And that matters a lot more than policy details.
I agree.
There have been a lot of people screaming for policy details, which it's fair enough to want policy details from her, but I think there's a lot of research and experience that shows that's not the thing that voters are most fixated on. And especially given some of the things that Trump had been saying about she's so weak, you know, these people in other countries are just going to have their way with her. Like, this was the performance that she needed to show that he was full of shit. Because up against him, who considers himself the world's greatest tough guy, she completely tore strips off him and tore strips off him fearlessly.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
I agree with that. And much like the convention, you know exactly what message they were trying to get out because she said it 10 times.
Yes.
The messages were, I have a plan, particularly a plan to cut taxes for small businesses. We need to turn the page.
Yes.
How many times did she say that?
Yeah.
We need to be more optimistic.
Yes.
We need to be less divisive.
Yeah.
They were her messages, and she said it over and over again. Another bit of the discipline. Did you notice? This is something which I think when I say it, you'll go, oh yeah, that's right. But I actually went to the trouble of actually looking at the actual timings. She almost never touched the time limit. I had a look at the timings. A number of times she finished her answers with 158, 159, the last 5 seconds. Like she timed them perfectly.
Yes.
Like I'm sure a lot of those answers were rehearsed.
No, of course they were.
But the fact that I'm sure there were times when she had to bail out the sentence early or whatever. Like she just nailed it again and again and again.
I think this debate is pretty clear evidence that over preparation is better than under preparation.
Yes, that's right. Because by contrast, Trump was cut off all the time.
Yes.
He often would answer for 30 seconds, run out of material, and then just start vamping in a completely self-destructive way for a while, and then go over time anyway.
Yes.
He, as you noted, he completely forgot his most effective attack.
Yes.
That line that we played before, the one you said that should have been the first answer.
Yeah.
He's used that 100 times before.
Yeah.
He just forgot to use it. And then
because he was so freaked out by her shaking his hand. He just never recovered from it.
But also, I bailed out of that line.
Yeah.
I sanewashed him. I bailed out of that line when he finished talking about that bit. But like, if there's one thing you're going to rehearse for one of these debates, it's your closing speech.
Yes.
You don't have a question for that.
No.
You have complete control. I have never seen another candidate not have a rehearsed version of their closing speech. Never.
Yeah.
Like the most lazy, pathetic, fly-by-the-seat loser has their closing speech rehearsed.
Yes.
I want to play you his whole closing speech. It is so clearly not rehearsed. Just have a listen to this, because once again, he had a little 30-second bit about what's she waiting for? Why doesn't she do it now?
Yep.
And then he suddenly realized, I've got nothing else. And this is my closer. Just have a listen to this wildly disparate, random assortment of thoughts all thrown together.
So she just started by saying she's going to do this, she's going to do that, she's going to do all these wonderful things. Why hasn't she done it? She's been there for 3.5 years. They've had 3.5 years to fix the border. They've had 3.5 years to create jobs and all the things we talked about. Why hasn't she done it? She should leave right now, go down to that beautiful White House, go to the Capitol, get everyone together and do the things you want to do, but you haven't done it and you won't do it because you believe in things that the American people don't believe in. You believe in things like we're not going to frack, we're not going to take fossil fuel, we're not going to do things that are going to make this country strong, whether you like it or not. Germany tried that, and within 1 year, they were back to building normal energy plants. We're not ready for it. We can't sacrifice our country for the sake of bad vision. But I just ask one simple question. Why didn't she do it? We're a failing nation. We're a nation that's in serious decline. We're being laughed at all over the world. All over the world, they're laughed. I know the leaders very well. They're coming to see me. They call me. We're laughed at all over the world. They don't understand what happened to us as a nation. We're not a leader. We don't have any idea what's going on. We have wars going on in the Middle East. We have wars going on with Russia and Ukraine. We're going to end up in a third world war, and it'll be a war like no other because of nuclear weapons, the power of weaponry. I rebuilt our entire military. She gave a lot of it away to the Taliban. She gave it to Afghanistan. What these people have done to our country, and maybe toughest of all, is allowing millions of people to come into our country. Many of them are criminals, and they're destroying our country. The worst president, the worst vice president in the history of our country.
What the hell was that?
It was one sentence. That's what it was.
It was just-
Look, he's right about one thing.
Yeah.
Everyone in the world was laughing.
Sure. It was just 2 minutes of just say some negative things about Kamala Harris.
Yes.
Like with no theme at all.
Yes. Now, can we talk about the abortion segment?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We absolutely can talk about the abortion segment. Yeah.
As you know,
Just before we do, I just
Yep.
want to say one thing about Trump's preparation before we move off into the abortion segment.
yes.
I'm surprised he didn't do more preparation because it turns out, according
Yeah.
to correspondent Timothy,
Yeah.
he noted that the preparations in Trump world sounded pretty interesting.
Trump, on the other hand, doesn't believe in preparing for the debate. So, within his team, evidently, preparations are pointedly not called debate prep, but policy time.
How can Trump not enjoy this? Thanks, Timothy. Okay, talking about abortion.
So, just on that point, so the people preparing him for the debate were Tulsi Gabbard and who else was it? Was it Matt Gaetz?
I don't remember.
I don't know.
Matt Gaetz was one of them. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. It's going to be 2 hours of people asking him questions like, "Sir, why are you so masculine?" Oh, yeah, I'm guessing it's not very good preparation. Okay. As you know, I've got an incredibly low opinion of presidential debates.
Oh, I know.
Kamala Harris's abortion segment was the best thing I have ever heard in a presidential debate
Oh.
by a long shot.
Mm.
And that was the moment. I mean, that was only, 10 minutes in. That was the moment when I was very sure that she had won the debate because I've just never heard anyone speak that well in a presidential debate and with that much genuine emotion but control at the same time in a way that would have made a lot of sense to a lot of the audience about what the reality of this issue is. Compared to Trump blathering away about everyone wanted this decided by the states. Now, as someone pointed out in the New York Times, no, actually, nobody wants this decided by the states. If you are genuinely opposed to abortion, you don't want California and New York deciding their own abortion laws. If you're genuinely committed to the right to abortion, you don't want Alabama and Louisiana deciding their own abortion laws. Nobody, with the exception of Ross Douthat, wants states to decide the abortion laws. But he was just blathering on in such an abstract way about it. The only time where he ever got into anything specific was, of course, the claim that babies get executed. Whereas she was talking about it in such real terms.
Should we play some?
Yes.
Let's understand how we got here. Donald Trump hand-selected 3 members of the United States Supreme Court with the intention that they would undo the protections of Roe v. Wade. And they did exactly as he intended. And now in over 20 states, there are Trump abortion bans, which make it criminal for a doctor or nurse to provide health care. In one state, it provides prison for life. Trump abortion bans that make no exception even for rape and incest, which understand what that means. A survivor of a crime of violation to their body does not have the right to make a decision about what happens to their body next. That is immoral. And one does not have to abandon their faith or deeply held beliefs to agree. The government, and Donald Trump certainly, should not be telling a woman what to do with her body. I have talked with women around our country. You want to talk about this is what people wanted? Pregnant women who want to carry a pregnancy to term, suffering from a miscarriage, being denied care in an emergency room because the healthcare providers are afraid they might go to jail, and she's bleeding out in a car in the parking lot. She didn't want that. Her husband didn't want that. A 12 or 13-year-old survivor of incest being forced to carry a pregnancy to term. They don't want that. And I pledge to you, when Congress passes a bill to put back in place the protections of Roe v. Wade, as President of the United States, I will proudly sign it into law.
That was of such a higher standard than anything else I've ever heard in a presidential debate.
And can I say, I don't know whether they had the foresight
Yes.
to see that he was going to use the line, we just did this because we did what everyone wants. He does say that every time. So I guess they could guess that.
Yeah.
But her entire speech revolved around that phrase that he had just said.
Yes.
So either she had great judgment to hang on there until he gave her the hook for her speech, or she improvised a little bit then. One of the two.
No, either way, it was very well done.
Yeah.
And I mean, given the importance of that in this election, given once again the potential importance of it to that slice of Republicans who might be considering voting against Trump, the fact that she was ultimately able to frame it in terms of the government has no right to decide what you do with your body, it was incredibly well done.
I'll tell you what I reckon was the best done thing.
What?
Before, I just noticed that on one of my notes, something I didn't say before with the physical stuff. I might just throw it in there from before.
Okay.
That one other thing that Trump did terribly with the physical stuff.
Yep.
He didn't look at her.
No.
He didn't say her name. He didn't acknowledge her existence. That made him look really uncomfortable.
Yes.
It's such a bad mistake from him. Whereas she acknowledged him. She looked at him most of the time.
Yes.
She basically rebutted him as he went.
Yes.
With her facial expressions.
Yep.
With an arched eyebrow or whatever it was.
Yes.
Yeah. So that was another contrast. But the thing which I think she did the best,
Yes.
which was a real masterclass, was getting inside his head.
Yes.
So let's talk about that.
Yes.
Now her team telegraphed this strategy 2 weeks out. Amazingly. That's when they started trolling Trump about the mics being muted.
Oh, yes.
Like 2 weeks ago. They put out a statement from her communications guy, Brian Fallon. We have told ABC and other networks seeking to host a possible October debate that we believe both candidates' mics should be live throughout the full broadcast. Our understanding is that Trump's handlers prefer the muted microphone because they don't think their candidate can act presidential for 90 minutes on his own. Then there's a blind quote, which was obviously Brian Fallon. She's more than happy to have exchanges with him if he tries to interrupt her. And given how shook he seems by her, he's very prone to having intemperate outbursts. And I think the campaign would want viewers to hear that. Okay, so for some reason, the media idiotically acted like this was a real negotiation. Like they genuinely wanted the mics to not be muted. I don't think they gave us stuff about the mics. They were trying to get inside his head. Clearly. That's what they were talking about, his team and how his team had no faith in him, etc. Right? And then we had this idiotic debate for about a week where there was this supposed public negotiation going on. In the end, they decided the mics were going to be muted when they weren't talking.
Yes.
And her team kept on trolling him afterwards. Like they put out another statement saying Donald Trump is surrendering to his advisors who won't allow him to debate with a live microphone. If his own team doesn't have confidence in him, the American people definitely can't. I mean, this is after they'd agreed. They were still digging. So it's really obvious what they were going to do, right?
Yes.
Then, in a very, once again, incredibly obvious preview of the debate strategy, Harris's team, they released an ad with a talking point that they were going to feature in the debate, which they then ran in swing states for the 3 days before the debate. It was this one here.
In 2016, Donald Trump said he would choose only the best people to work in his White House. Now those people have a warning for America. Trump is not fit to be president again. Here's his vice president.
Anyone who puts himself over the Constitution should never be president of the United States. It should come as no surprise that I will not be endorsing Donald Trump this year.
His defense secretary.
Do you think Trump can be trusted with the nation's secrets ever again?
No. I mean, it's just irresponsible action that places our service members at risk, places our nation's security at risk.
His national security advisor.
Donald Trump will cause a lot of damage. The only thing he cares about is Donald Trump.
And the nation's highest-ranking military officer.
We don't take an oath to a king or a queen or to a tyrant or a dictator. And we don't take an oath to a wannabe dictator.
Take it from the people who knew him best. Donald Trump is a danger to our troops and our democracy. We can't let him lead our country again.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
As you say, once again, appealing to Nikki Haley voters.
Mm-hmm.
Also, why is their voiceover guy always sound like he just woke up? Donald Trump. And then if that wasn't obvious enough, I can't believe how obvious they made this. The day of the debate, they played on Fox News, only on Fox News, where Donald Trump was sure to see it. They played this ad here.
Here's a 78-year-old billionaire who has not stopped whining about his problems.
Oh, she had a big crowd. Oh, the crowd.
This weird obsession with crowd sizes. It just goes on and on and on. America's ready for a new chapter. We are ready for a President Kamala Harris.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I approve this message.
For those who are listening, the little cricket moment with a yawn was a supposed Trump rally when no one was there. so could they be more obvious what their plan was?
They could not have been more obvious.
They actually, in think pieces, they were giving named quotes from the campaign saying, we plan to provoke him and get under his skin.
Yes.
They were just being so open. And then they just did it and he just let them. It was astonishing. Like, I'll give him credit. He resisted for about 10 minutes. In the section when they were talking about flip-flops, Kamala Harris's flip-flops, she tried the strategy then of defending herself.
Yes.
And then doing a really obvious, blatant attack on Trump at the end and hoping that would distract him from responding about the flip-flops. That was the one where she said, not everyone got handed $400 million on a silver platter and then filed bankruptcy 6 times.
Yes.
Clearly trying to get under his skin.
Yeah.
And he took the bait,
yeah,
but he only took the bait for 30 seconds. And then he had the discipline to go back and then respond to the actual topic.
Yeah.
But once again, she had the discipline to stick to the tactic and she kept on going.
Yeah.
Whenever she thought there was an area where she was in trouble, she threw out the chum and hoped that he would take the bait and forget to get her in the area where she was in trouble. And this is where we get to the part which I'm going to play quite a long grab because I think this sums up the whole debate.
Okay.
And I think this is where they were quite masterful. It's the immigration section.
Yes.
Okay, so let me talk you through what you're about to watch. She's asked a tough question about immigration. They asked her, you just passed an executive order that made a difference to numbers. Why didn't you do this 4 years ago like Trump said you should? That's a really tough question for them to answer. She goes to her usual talking point about Trump killing the immigration bill.
Yes.
But of course, that talking point doesn't address the question because the question was, you didn't need the immigration bill. You did it anyway. So why didn't you do it 4 years earlier? She knows that's not going to get it done. She knows that her ass is hanging out for Trump to just to thump her, right? And so what she does is she spends her last 30 seconds and she times it perfectly. Her last 30 seconds just throwing out as much antagonistic chum as she possibly can into the water in the hope it will distract Trump. And then Trump totally swallows it up.
Yes.
Gives the worst answer possible. And by the way, look at how Trump reacts.
Yes.
When she says his crowd is bored.
Yes.
I urge everyone who's listening to this, go to the YouTube or the Facebook and have a look at this clip. So you can see a look on Trump's face when she says his crowd is bored. Bear in mind, they ran an ad directed at him only 8 hours earlier, telling him they were going to do this. Look at how he visibly reacts when she says that. And then look at how Harris laughs at him while he's taking the debate.
This past June, President Biden imposed tough new asylum restrictions. We know the numbers since then have dropped significantly. But my question to you tonight is, why did the administration wait until 6 months before the election to act? And would you have done anything differently from President Biden on this?
So I'm the only person on this stage who has prosecuted transnational criminal organizations for the trafficking of guns, drugs, and human beings. And let me say that the United States Congress, including some of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, came up with a border security bill which I supported. And that bill would have put 1,500 more border agents on the border to help those folks who are working there right now overtime trying to do their job. It would have allowed us to stem the flow of fentanyl coming into the United States. I know there are so many families watching tonight who have been personally affected by the surge of fentanyl in our country. That bill would have put more resources to allow us to prosecute transnational criminal organizations for trafficking in guns, drugs, and human beings. But you know what happened to that bill? Donald Trump got on the phone, called up some folks in Congress, and said, kill the bill. And you know why? Because he'd prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And understand, this comes at a time where the people of our country actually need a leader who engages in solutions, who actually addresses the problems at hand. But what we have in the former president is someone who would prefer to run on a problem instead of fixing a problem. And I'll tell you something, he's going to talk about immigration a lot tonight, even when it's not the subject that is being raised. And I'm going to actually do something really unusual, and I'm going to invite you to attend one of Donald Trump's rallies, because it's a really interesting thing to watch. You will see during the course of his rallies, he talks about fictional characters like Hannibal Lecter. He will talk about windmills cause cancer. And what you will also notice is that people start leaving his rallies early out of exhaustion and boredom. And I will tell you, the one thing you will not hear him talk about is you. You will not hear him talk about your needs, your dreams, and your desires. And I'll tell you, I believe you deserve a president who actually puts you first, and I pledge to you that I will.
Vice President Harris, thank you. President Trump, on that point, I want to get your response.
Well, I would like to respond.
Let me just ask, though, why did you try to kill that bill, and successfully so? That would have put thousands of additional agents and officers on the border.
First, let me respond as to the
Please.
rallies. She said people start leaving. People don't go to her rallies. There's no reason to go. And the people that do go, she's bussing them in and paying them to be there, and then showing them in a different light. So she can't talk about that. People don't leave my rallies. We have the biggest rallies, the most incredible rallies in the history of politics. That's because people want to take their country back. Our country is being lost. We're a failing nation. And it happened 3.5 years ago. And what's going on here, you're going to end up in World War III, just to go into another subject. What they have done to our country by allowing these millions and millions of people to come into our country, and look at what's happening to the towns all over the United States. And a lot of towns don't want to talk. It's not going to be Aurora or Springfield. A lot of towns don't want to talk about it because they're so embarrassed by it. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in. They're eating the cats. They're eating the pets of the people that live there. And this is what's happening in our country, and it's a shame. As far as rallies are concerned, as far as the reason they go is they like what I say. They want to bring our country back. They want to make America great again. It's a very simple phrase, make America great again. She's destroying this country, and if she becomes president, this country doesn't have a chance of success. Not only success, we'll end up being Venezuela on steroids.
I just want to clarify here. You bring up Springfield, Ohio, and ABC News did reach out to the city manager there. He told us there have been no credible reports of specific claims of pets being harmed, injured, or abused by individuals within the immigrant community.
Well, I've seen people on television.
Let me just say here, this is
the people on television say my dog was taken and used for food. So maybe he said that, and maybe that's a good thing to say for a city manager.
I'm not taking this from
but
television.
But the people
I'm
on
taking it from
television
the city
saying their
manager.
dog was eaten by the people that went there.
Again, the Springfield city manager says there's no evidence of that. Vice
We'll
President
find
Harris,
out.
I'll let you respond to the rest of what you've heard.
You talk about extreme.
So what you just watched then, I played a really long round because honestly, I just think that was the whole debate.
Yes.
And in particular, that if you just rewind quickly and just look at the expression on Kamala Harris's face when the fact check was happening and Trump was going, I saw it on TV. That is a look of pity.
Yeah.
That is the most devastating look. Obviously, she didn't actually have pity.
Yes.
But she controlled her face.
Yes.
Like that was just the stiletto. And then her talk about extreme.
Yes.
Like it was just this crowning glory. That
While
moment.
he was still saying, the people on TV. The people on TV.
Yeah.
Said it.
And sorry, I know you want to jump in there, but just to finish off the point. So he went from crowd sizes for like a minute.
Yes.
To crowds to then the Springfield point is actually a legitimate point that he could make if he wanted to argue properly. Not about dogs and cats and geese or whatever, but about a town being overrun because there are too many migrants. Like he could say, 5,000, 10,000 migrants for the factories would be great, but there's 20,000. There are too many people. They can't be processed. And he could talk about the real problems, which are published in the New York Times. We'll talk about this another time.
Yeah.
Right?
You're sanewashing again, Chaz.
There's an argument he could have made.
Yes.
But he was too rattled to make it.
Yeah.
And so he made a stupid sounding argument that made him sound insane. And then after, when he sounded at his most insane, he then went back to the rallies again. Like for more. And then that pathetic argument with the fact checker. So what happened was she took the moment she was most vulnerable in the debate.
Yes.
And she turned it into the biggest victory of the debate.
Yes.
Making him look the worst of the debate.
Absolutely.
And she never mentioned immigration again.
Yes.
Right? She was out of there. He never had another opportunity. Bang. Snapped shut. Door slammed shut.
I just want to reiterate a point which I have made before, but I didn't realize that Trump was going to make it for me again so spectacularly. Republicans get into serious trouble every time they mention dogs or cats. Going all the way back to Mitt Romney.
Yes.
And the dog on the roof of his car.
Yes.
The only Republican who ever talked about a dog successfully was Richard Nixon. And that was because he was just such an accomplished bullshitter that he made up a story about the media demanding that he give his daughter's puppy back to a donor.
Yeah.
Right, if you're going to talk about a dog, that's how you do it. But ever since then, we've had probably the most serious female vice presidential contender completely sabotage her own, her own attempt to become the vice presidential candidate by talking about shooting her dog in the face. We've had J.D. Vance talking about childless cat ladies. Just stay away from people's pets.
That's the takeaway.
Everything that they say sounds like an act of aggression against people's pets. 29% of Americans own cats. Many more than that own dogs. It's 40% or something like that. Don't talk about people's pets. No matter what point you think you are making, make it without people's pets.
And that moral goes double for when Mercury becomes Democratic nominee.
That's right.
My dog. By the way, I didn't want that. Like, that was long enough, that grab, so I cut it off there.
Yeah.
But I could have played another 2 minutes because you know what Harris did then after the take pity moment? And because, of course, he didn't mention the immigration bill at all.
No.
So she was free to just talk about whatever she wanted. He set her up for a free 2-minute attack. And you know what she used?
What?
She used the ad from before. She used the all the people you hire hate you thing that she had told him she was going to use. And she then used it. And she used it perfectly because it was totally rehearsed. So he set it up for a freebie after he let her off the hook on what he should have attacked her on. It was just such a smashing, that particular moment. I don't think the rest of the debate was a smashing like that. But that was where everything just worked.
Yes.
Just so well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And it also, to come back to the foreign policy point, about, she's clearly not going to get walked over. It also just showed how easy it is to get the better of him.
Totally. Which is another point that she made.
Yeah.
Like that he's easy to manipulate.
Yes.
She showed it. Absolutely. Okay, so let me ask you then about in terms of what they were trying to do. Like I've just told you what Harris was trying to do. What was Trump trying to do, and did he achieve any of it?
So what he was trying to do was to make everything about the border and immigration.
Yeah.
And to link every other problem to the border and immigration.
And did that work?
No, it didn't work. He doesn't need, it baffles me because he doesn't need to do that with the economy. He doesn't need to claim that the fix to the economy is stopping immigration. But this is what he does. He's, crime for him is entirely linked to the problem of immigration. So he wanted to bring everything back to immigration from the start. And that's why he fucked up the first point about the economy, because he wanted to talk about immigration straight away.
Yeah.
So he basically let her off the hook with that. Now, he did succeed in talking about immigration a lot.
Yes.
But even for a country that expects Trump to be hyperbolic, he was straying off into such strange realms of unreality that nothing that he said could be taken seriously. So when the first point that he gets to is eating dogs and cats, immediately he has lost 3/4 of his audience.
Yep.
When he says repeatedly that crime in every other country in the world is dropping because they are sending all of their criminals to the United States.
Yeah.
I'm sure like 15% of Americans believe that.
Yeah.
But they're people who are already voting for Donald Trump.
Or not voting at all.
When he was saying that, I could tell the moderators were thinking about fact-checking that one.
Yeah.
But then they were like, why bother?
Yeah.
Yeah. And but on the point of moderator fact-checking, when you're fact-checking things like there is no state in the country where it's legal to kill babies after birth, or like dogs aren't being eaten, I don't call that fact-checking. That's not fact-checking. That's comic interjection from the moderators.
Yes.
Like they weren't trying to advantage Kamala Harris there. They weren't trying to sabotage Trump. They were just trying to make themselves look good by getting in these incredibly funny comments described as fact checks.
They were trying to entertain Dr. Dave Smith.
They were. they were trying to make themselves look good as a network as well. Like, yeah, we're the network where we're going to say funny stuff with a straight face.
I'm not sure that's what they were trying to do, but sure.
I think it's exactly what they were trying to do. That's not fact checking. That's comedy.
I want to pick up on what you're saying though about the dogs and the cats and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I agree, because I think something he was trying to do was trying to make Harris seem extreme, but I think he overswung way too hard, possibly because she railed him.
Yeah.
But he does this sometimes. He just swung way too wildly to the point that he just sounded ridiculous. Like I wrote down a few of these. Her vice presidential pick says execution after birth is okay. Joe Biden hates you.
Yeah, which kind of undermined the message about you are Joe Biden.
Yes.
Joe Biden hates you.
Exactly.
You hate yourself.
It makes no sense. She hates Israel and she hates the Arab population.
I could see the workings in his mind at that point. Oh, like shit, gotta say something to remind those voters in Michigan that they don't like her.
Yeah. Now she wants to do transgender operations on illegal aliens that are in prison. In Springfield, they're eating the dogs, the people that came in, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets. Yeah, we know that one. Okay. So for all they're the ones I wrote down. There were others. Even some of those attacks are actually based on something. Like the transgender one, that was based on something. That was based on 2019. She filled out a form where for the ACLU where she ticked that box, right?
Yeah.
He could have used that if he didn't sound like an idiot when he did. But he just went way over the top. No explanation, no context. He sounds crazy.
Yeah.
And so he doesn't get any credit for it.
No.
It actually helps her.
Yes.
So the
Also, I mean, on the dogs and cats point, this is yet another example, and it's worth noting he got this shit from JD Vance.
Yep.
Like the source of so many problems.
Yeah.
And because JD Vance is terminally online.
Yes.
When he starts talking about they're eating dogs and cats in Springfield, Ohio, 95% of the audience would have had no idea what he was talking about.
Absolutely.
This was something that was completely within the right-wing bubble.
Yeah.
JD Vance, unfortunately, earlier that day, had admitted that the rumors about the dogs and cats might not be true.
Yes.
Yes. But, of course, that's not going to deter Trump. But, yeah, not only was it completely made up, it was just something that was so inside the bubble that for people watching it, there's like never a chance that could have been true. Yeah, or would have made any sense.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Like people, I mean, I saw the reactions. People were laughing at him as if he was crazy.
Yes.
Not as if he was quoting something he'd seen from Elon Musk.
Yes.
Like he was crazy.
Yeah.
And that's not the reaction he wanted. So I think that was a problem. Yeah, like, and you already mentioned that the confused, he was trying to tie to Joe Biden, but as you said, he did it in a confused way.
Yes.
Half the time he was saying that she was Joe Biden, and half the time she was saying that Joe, I hate her. And then at one point,
by the way, he hates you.
Yeah. And she responded really well with, at one point in time when he said, you are Joe Biden. She responded with, well, clearly I am not President Biden. And once again, gave that look of pity. And there were times, or a few times when she was just creeping up to the line of saying, you're confused and old.
Yes.
And that time she didn't even need to say it. She just gave the look.
Yes.
And I suspect if there's a second debate, that's going to be her aim.
Yes.
To build on that. Because
Yeah.
I think she's planted the seed now. She hasn't converted it, but we'll see. We'll talk about a potential second debate. I think she did have one failure. I think Harris had one failure, and that was, I don't know if they were planning to do this, but they should have been planning to do this to try, when define her as a change candidate. They completely lost that. Like she at no point in time tried to distinguish herself from Joe Biden in any way, shape, or form. She at no point in time tried to suggest that she had a new kind of policy. Like she did the talking, she did the whole turning the page thing.
Yeah.
But in terms of the policies she kept on repeating, she didn't say, and now we got something completely new or something. Like, she didn't try to build the vibe of change at all. And I think that was a shame, because I think that would have been useful for her. We're going to get to some polling in a second where people are not seeing her as a change candidate. They're seeing Trump as a change candidate. And that might be the factor that determines the election. And she just left that completely. Maybe she was just so intoxicated by how much success she was having with the other strategies. But yeah, I thought that was a failure on her behalf to just leave that message behind.
I don't think she completely left it behind. I think she did leave it quite late.
Yeah.
But it was in her closing speech. She said the choice is between a candidate who's looking to the future and one who's looking to the past.
Yeah.
When she was asked about race, she described herself as part of a new generation of leadership. I mean, change candidate means different things to different people. And when people answer that question about, is Donald Trump going to change things? Like, not all of them are saying he's going to change things positively. And certainly for the group that she was trying to appeal to, part of being the change candidate is leaving Donald Trump behind.
Yeah.
Like, even though Biden has been the president for the last 4 years, Trump has dominated politics for the last 9 years.
That's true.
For a lot of people, that's, the change that they want to see is just him off the TV screen. So I don't think she completely left that behind, but I do see the point that you're making. Certainly, yeah, in policy terms, she wasn't offering anything new, except you might have heard about a $50,000 startup for small businesses.
Really?
Did you hear about that?
She didn't mention that. I don't think she mentioned that. She might have forgotten.
Yeah.
The little tax cut for small businesses. Yes. In terms of moments that do you think any moments are going to live on this debate? I mean, obviously the dogs and cats and pets probably.
Yeah, I think that is going to live on. I have concepts of a plan.
Yeah.
what was so resonant about that is that everyone's had that half-assed thought before.
Yeah.
Well, I've thought about thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. But no, I thought in affirmative terms, her spiel about abortion should live on.
Mm.
I don't know if it will, but as I said, that was the most effective piece of rhetoric I've ever heard in a presidential debate.
I'm not sure. I mean, these won't live on as moments that are like clipped out.
Yeah.
But I think there's potential for Trump to regret not agreeing to a veto on the national abortion ban.
Yep.
Like the fact that it was put to him twice.
Yes.
And in particular, I said J.D. Vance said that you would veto a
yes.
national abortion ban. He said, well, J.D. Vance never spoke to me about that.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Another opportunity to throw Vance under the bus. The fact that the first foreign leader mentioned in the debate was Viktor Orban.
As his character endorsement.
Yeah.
And as he said, he described him as a strong man.
Yes. That's another thing again. So far inside the people are going to love this when they hear that Viktor Orban is endorsing me.
Yes.
Right? Maybe he's worried that he's losing Rod Dreher's vote because of all of the abortion flip-flops.
That vote is safe. Let me tell you, Trump, that vote is safe. The other one along the same lines, 3 times he was asked whether he wants to win the war in Ukraine.
Yeah.
And he said, I want the war to end.
Yeah.
I want the war to stop. I want the war settled.
Yeah.
Once again, I don't think any of those were killer sound bites.
No.
But I think that concept,
yes,
I reckon might get used against him at some point in time
I'm
in
pretty
the
sure
future.
it will.
Yeah.
Yes.
So there is that as well. Jeez. Yeah, I'll do it. Like, I'm nervous about going here because
Okay.
I'm gonna get punished. I'm leaning with my chin, but look, I know this annoys a lot of you because last night I was moderating the social media for Planet America, the Facebook and the YouTube.
Yeah.
And we got literally hundreds of people abusing me for this. Literally hundreds of people abusing me as being some kind of Republican stooge because everyone knows how much I love Trump.
Yeah.
And because I said on Planet that I thought that the moderators were leaning towards Kamala Harris, and I thought Trump had a case to say that the moderators weren't 100% fair. Do you have any thoughts about that before I go into why?
As I say, their fact checking wasn't actual fact checking. They were letting Trump violate the rules constantly.
Yeah, but they definitely were. Yeah,
but
definitely
you could argue that was helping Harris. Yeah. So, I mean, certainly Harris said some stuff that was definitely fact checkable.
She definitely did.
Yeah. In fact, the stuff that she was saying that was particularly fact checkable has been fact checked many times. So it was almost like she was deliberately flouting it.
Yeah, like the bloodbath one, for instance.
Yeah.
Yes.
But then again, that's in a different league of falsehood from executing babies after birth and eating dogs.
Well, those ones were ridiculous.
Yes.
But I mean, in terms of the one that actually stood out to me, I thought this. I mean, to be honest, Trump dropped the ball on this as well.
Yep.
He should have fact checked this.
Yes.
But if he didn't, I thought if you're gonna fact check things, the IVF stuff.
Yeah.
Like when she said, I think I got the quote here. She said something like, couples were being denied IVF treatments under Trump's abortion bans. That's pretty bad. Like, I mean, like no one's being denied IVF treatments, number one, for anything. Right? Calling it Trump's abortion bans and then saying the IVF. And then especially given last week, he announced as his policy to make all IVF free.
Yeah.
Like you can't get much further away from the truth there, right? Let that slide.
But instead of
Trump should have said something. Trump should have said, he should have announced his policy. And what he said was, I'm a leader in fertility or fertilization.
Yes.
What the hell does that mean?
But no, he wasn't going to say that because that would have interrupted that killer line of attack he was developing about how this is just like student loans.
Yeah.
It's just like student loans.
Yeah. Maybe mention the policy about making it free next time, mate.
Yeah, and are we going to talk about reactions to the debate?
I don't know many because I'm
okay.
And
the polls and Okay.
This is where you jump in, right?
Okay, yes.
But before you do, let me just finish this point about the moderators, just so I can get my ass kicked by the Peppers nice and hard.
Okay.
Okay. So,
You're really sticking it out.
well, look, just to be clear, I know that Trump and friends are using this as an excuse.
Yeah.
And when something gets used as a partisan excuse, it makes you want to revolt against it. I get that. I get that same impulse.
Yeah.
But I'd just be lying if I was saying that when I was watching debate before anyone reacted, I was just thinking, come on, guys, back off a bit here.
Yes.
Because I just was. And and I don't think it affected the result. I think Harris did better anyway.
Yes.
But I just found it frustrating as a viewer. So we've like we're just saying, there were things they could have fact checked Harris on. I didn't have a problem with most of their fact checks.
Yep.
Like in terms of I thought most of them were fine. It just seemed like it was quite one-sided, the fact checking. There was one that I objected to, which I thought, if you're going to fact check in the middle of a debate, you better make it stick.
Yeah.
It better be black and white, 100% true, no gray at all.
Yeah.
And viewers of PEP will know where I'm going here because we've mentioned this one several times. But I'm talking about the one where they asked about the Florida abortion ballot question.
Yes.
And Trump said this.
They have abortion in the 9th month. They even have, and you can look at the governor of West Virginia, the previous governor of West Virginia, not the current governor, who's doing an excellent job, but the governor before, he said the baby will be born and we will decide what to do with the baby. In other words, we'll execute the baby. And that's why I did that, because that predominates, because they're radical. The Democrats are radical in that. And her vice presidential pick, which I think was a horrible pick, by the way, for our country, because he is really out of it. But her vice presidential pick says abortion in the 9th month is absolutely fine. He also says execution after birth. It's execution, no longer abortion, because the baby is born, is okay. And that's not okay with me, hence the vote.
So that was ridiculous. He argues this stuff all the time in an over-the-top, stupid way.
Yeah.
But this is the fact check that what was it, Lindsay Davis?
Yes.
Lindsay Davis came in with.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
And then she's moved straight to Kamala Harris. Okay, now those who've been with PEP for a while know what I'm about to play, where this grab comes from. One of Trump's favorite grabs, it comes from here.
You know, when we talk about third trimester abortions, these are done with the consent of obviously the mother, with the consent of the physicians, more than one physician, by the way. And it's done in cases where there may be severe deformities, there may be a fetus that's non-viable. So in this particular example, if a mother is in labor, I can tell you exactly what would happen. The infant would be delivered. The infant would be kept comfortable. The infant would be resuscitated if that's what the mother and the family desired. And then a discussion would ensue between the physicians and the mother.
So that's the ex-governor of Virginia, not West Virginia. Thank you, Trump. The Governor Northam. He's saying the infant would not be resuscitated if that was not what the mother wanted in the case of a non-viable baby. Of course, Trump never puts in those details.
Yeah.
But for Lindsay Davis to come over the top and say, no, never happens whatsoever under any circumstances, that's not a correct fact check.
No, I thought it was a correct fact check because he was saying Tim Walz says execution of babies is okay, but it's not okay with me.
Yeah.
He wasn't even talking about Ralph Northam at that point. Like, yes, that's where the original kernel comes from. But he was actually saying Tim Walz says execution of babies is okay. There's a massive difference between non-resuscitation of a non-viable fetus and execution of a baby.
She said there is no state where let's play again what she said.
There is no state in this country where it is legal to kill a baby after it's born. Madam Vice President, I want to get your response to President Trump.
I'd say not resuscitating a baby after it's born is killing a baby after it's born. Let me be clear. I'm not saying that can't be fact-checked, what he said.
Yeah.
Because you're right. What he said about Tim Walz
Yes.
is not accurate.
Yes. Yeah.
Right? I'm saying the fact check she gave is not an accurate fact check. I don't think. I think it's grey at the very least. I'm not saying it's 100% necessarily, that's a lie. I'm saying she's in a grey area there where she's acting like it's black and white. And I think if you're gonna fact check someone in the middle of a debate, you've got to make it good. Like, and it annoyed me when I go, why are you coming in for that one when you know it's more complicated than that?
But remember, Chaz, she's not fact checking.
That's true.
She's doing comedy.
She's doing comedy. Fair enough. But the other thing was that the question selection I thought helped Harris as well. Harris had 4 areas of weakness going into this.
Yeah.
Immigration, which they gave a fair run at.
Yes.
I explained how she got out of that one.
Yeah.
Inflation, they basically didn't touch. Like Trump brought it up once or twice himself.
Yep.
But the moderators basically didn't touch it. Harris's actions while Joe Biden was degrading, didn't touch it.
Yep.
Didn't even mention Joe Biden. Once again, Trump tried. Harris's flip-flops, they gave one question to and then moved on. By contrast, they did talk about race and climate change and healthcare, 3 of Harris's strengths. They spent 10 minutes dwelling on January 6th in 2020, which I don't want to. People who are abusing me online were saying, I was suggesting that I was saying you shouldn't talk about that. I'm definitely not saying you shouldn't talk about that. That is Trump's biggest weakness. So you should definitely talk about that. But you should talk about that the same amount you talk about Harris's flip-flops, because that's her greatest weakness. Right? Like I felt like that was the biggest topic of the debate by such a long way. Like, and that's fine for Trump, but what's Harris's equivalent for that if you want to have a fair debate?
She does not have an equivalent to that.
Well,
is the answer.
Yeah.
She does not have the equivalent of trying to overturn the result of a democratic election.
But in terms of what's her
taking
weaknesses?
different policy positions at different points in her career, i.e. something that every politician does, is not an equivalent weakness to having tried to overturn a democratic election.
But when you say that's her greatest weakness, like the fact that in 2019 she had literally opposite policies for almost everything, and she hasn't explained why, other than to say, my values haven't changed.
Yeah, that is her greatest weakness.
Okay, so don't you think it's worth more than one question? Because she didn't answer it. When they asked her that question, she didn't answer it at all.
Yeah, no, I thought that was pretty masterful, actually.
Yeah, but don't you think that could have done with a follow-up, a little bit more time? Like, I felt like they followed up. The only time they repeated the question, because it was avoided, was in the January 6th section. It was David Muir repeating, is there anything you regret about what you did on that day? They asked him that.
Yeah.
He avoided it. They asked him that again. Like they didn't do that with Harris when she avoided the flip-flops.
I think they were just being attentive to the relative substantive importance of these issues.
Okay. All right. Okay. I should also say that after the 10 minutes on Trump January 6th and 2020, the next question they asked was this, which was they asked Harris this, which was, I don't know why they asked Harris this. This was just a massive freebie for her.
Vice President Harris, you heard the president there tonight. He said he didn't say that he lost by a whisker. So he still believes he did not lose the election that was won by President Biden and yourself. But I do want to ask you about something that's come up in the last couple of days. This was a post from President Trump about this upcoming election just weeks away. He said, when I win, those people who cheated, and then he lists donors, voters, election officials, he says will be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law, which will include long-term prison sentences. One of your campaign's top lawyers responded saying, we won't let Donald Trump intimidate us. We won't let him suppress the vote. Is that what you believe he's trying to do here?
Why are they asking her that? Please punch him in the face. Like if they're gonna ask anyone about that topic, it's got to be Trump, doesn't it?
Marco Rubio was very upset about this.
About this exact thing?
Yeah,
I had no idea.
He said, he said their question to Trump was literally, why did you do the bad thing? And then their question to Harris was, what do you think about him doing the bad thing?
Oh, I think in this case, isn't that true?
I just think it's remarkable that Marco Rubio only speaks in Twitter lingo now.
Yeah, that's fair enough. That's fair enough.
Yeah.
That's fair enough. Anyway, okay. So you reckon I'm backing up the wrong tree on this one?
Yeah.
Okay, fair enough.
Yes.
I gave my best.
Oh, yes, you did.
Okay.
Yep.
All right. So talk to me about after the debate.
Okay, so the CNN Insta reaction poll, which is the gold standard of Insta reaction polls to debates.
Yes.
Which, I mean, it's not a huge sample size. It's, I think, 670 people, which is exactly 100,000th of the people who watch the debate.
Yes.
And they do give the caveat that people who watch the debate are not representative of the general population. So 63% of them said that Harris won. 37% of them said that said that Trump won.
Yeah.
And just to put that in context, after the first debate, 67% had said that Trump had won, and 33% had said that Biden had won.
How could anyone have thought Biden won?
Well, yeah, this is how rusted on people are.
Yeah.
So, I mean, that just gives you a really clear idea of how this debate was.
Yeah.
Like, it wasn't as bad for Trump as the first one was for Biden.
Sure.
But those numbers are frighteningly similar. There's a 6 and a 3 in front of those two top-line numbers.
Yeah.
So, okay, that's pretty bad.
Yeah.
Not a scientific sample, but the Washington Post was doing live chats with swing voters in swing states. And of the 24 people that they were speaking to, 22 said that Trump won 22 said that Harris won and 2 said that Trump won.
Yeah.
But these are not the real data points who tell you who won the debate. Okay.
What are your data points?
The real data points are the number of right-wing pundits who either said it's a draw or nobody won. Whenever you say that debate was a draw, or, oh, God, I can't believe that anyone watched that, or, yeah, nobody won that, bad night for everyone, that means your candidate lost. That is the absolutely clear thing. Data point number 2, when the first thing you do is complain about the moderators, that means your candidate lost.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Data point.
Can I give a data point?
Yes.
Truth Social prices. Truth Social prices.
Cratered.
As soon as they opened up, they went down from 18 cents, which they're down to 15 cents.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Frank Luntz, of all people.
Yeah.
Now, I think Frank Luntz had kind of dug himself into a hole because he had said a few days before the debate is everything.
Everything.
Yeah. Now, I thought this was a bit ridiculous, but there was a lot, actually. He wasn't alone. There's a lot of very fatalistic commentary about this debate. So basically saying this debate is the last thing that's going to happen in the entire campaign, and whatever happens in this debate decides the election.
Well, there might be another debate.
Yes.
Yeah.
Frank Luntz was all in on this. The debate is everything.
Yeah.
So he basically had no choice but to say Trump's lost the election because of this debate. That's actually not a data point about whether Harris won or lost the debate. But Frank Luntz does tend to be fairly dramatic about these things. But anyway, all of the data is pointing to the fact that there's an obvious consensus that Harris won the debate.
On Fox, they completely conceded it.
Yes. Yeah.
Like Brit Hume. Sure, he looks like he's eating a lemon like he always does.
Yeah.
But here.
Make no mistake about it. Trump had a bad night. He rose to the debate repeatedly when she baited him, something I'm sure his advisors had begged him not to do. In the first debate when Biden attacked him, he just kept his cool and kept going. In this debate, he rose to debating, and we heard so many of the old grievances that we'd long thought that Trump had learned were not winners politically. And there they all were, talking about how he didn't lose the election and all that. I mean, my sense is that she came out of this in pretty good shape. Now, how long this will last and is anybody's guess. But for tonight, at least, this was pretty much her night.
Robert F. Kennedy said Trump's lost independent voters because of this.
Robert F. Kennedy.
That's a way more bold assessment than I was prepared to make about that. Yeah.
He was running so much hack gear for Trump this week.
He was.
And he
was still doing it. He was still saying it's the fault of the moderators. Moderators are a disgrace. But he said, Trump has lost independent votes for this.
Jeez.
Yeah.
But I just want to make very clear on the moderators thing. I cannot emphasize enough. Just because I know I'm going to cop it.
Yeah.
I just want to make sure I cop it for the right things. I want to cop it for my actual opinion.
Yes.
I just want to make everyone crystal clear, this did not affect the outcome of the debate.
It did not.
Harris thunk Trump
Yes.
completely.
Yeah.
He was completely undisciplined. He was like he made a mess of this,
Yeah.
and she did well. That's why the outcome was what it was.
Yes.
Quite separately from that, I was disappointed with the moderator. But
Okay.
Go on.
Yes, yeah. The only News Limited property in the world that I'm aware of that was pushing the line that Trump won was The Australian.
Did they seriously say Trump won?
Adam Creighton, Timothy Lynch.
What was their logic?
I didn't read this shit.
I can't even imagine what the logic would be.
Fortunately, this is safely behind a paywall.
I'm going to look that up.
I didn't, yeah. I think Greg Sheridan and Joe Hockey both called it either a draw or inconsequential. But then there's a couple of commentators who actually said that the Trump won because Harris didn't answer any questions.
It might be inconsequential.
It might be.
Like, it might not make a difference to the poll.
Might not make a difference.
Like, debates often don't.
Yes.
But, yeah, he lost.
Yeah, he really did lose. Yes. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my assessment of it.
Okay.
Anyway, and I mean, to go back to some basic facts about debating, you generally win a debate if the debate ends up being what you want it to be about.
Yeah.
That goes for the most formal high school debate or a presidential debate. If the debate was about what you wanted it to be about, you've probably won the debate. And it was very clear that this debate was all about what Harris wanted it to be about.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. Yeah, I mean, I probably shouldn't say things like won and lost debates because I hate that phrase. But Harris obviously would have been extremely happy with the outcome from this debate.
Yes.
And Trump, not so much.
No.
Do you think there's going to be a second debate?
I've got no idea at this point. I mean, Harris's team was calling for it immediately afterwards. Trump was saying he would do one on Fox News.
Yeah.
And I think it was Jesse Waters said to him, oh, yeah, like Brett Baer and Martha McCollum would be awesome hosts. And Trump was like, no, not them. No, they're terrible. They're terrible. It wouldn't have been Jesse Waters who suggested that to him, because then he said, no, it should be Sean Hannity and Jesse Waters.
Well, I wouldn't want to have Martha and Brett. I'd love to have somebody else other than Martha and Brett. I'd love to have, frankly, Sean or Jesse or Laura, somebody else. Let's give other people a shot. But I didn't think Martha and Brett were good last night. I thought Jesse was fantastic last night, what he said. Jesse really got it. Jesse said that Trump won that debate. We won that debate by a lot. No, I wouldn't want Martha involved.
Okay, Mr. President.
But I would take some others.
So let's just say, to put it mildly, I don't think that the Harris campaign would be agreeing to that.
No.
Yeah.
Okay, let me make a prediction here.
Okay.
If Harris goes up in the polls,
yes,
by let's say 1.5 points. Like if she gets a point ahead in the swing states, maybe 2 points ahead in the swing states, then there'll be another debate.
Yeah,
it ain't gonna be on Fox. But it's pretty clear the Harris campaign is only gonna do things that suit them.
Yeah.
That's very clear.
It is very
So
clear.
it ain't gonna be on Fox. Trump is going to have to be desperate for there to be another debate.
Yep.
And he'll get desperate if he's 2 points down.
Yeah.
So he'll roll the dice.
Yes.
If it looks that way. So that's my prediction.
Yes.
If there's a polling result, then there'll be another debate. If there isn't a polling result, then I think that's the last time we'll see a debate with Trump in it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there we go.
Okay.
Nice. All right. Now we've got lots of anything else you want to add to the debate?
No, but I don't have a huge amount of time left. So can we go to forecasting?
Please.
Because we promised this to the Peppers.
Yes.
So I've just come back from the American Political Science Association conference, where I went to a couple of panels on presidential forecasting, where they were all doing this thing that Chaz doesn't like, which is using data from well before the election, like in some cases a year before the election.
Yeah.
I think the latest I saw was like June before the election to forecast it. And with this kind of academic forecasting, they pride themselves on doing it with as few variables as possible.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea is remove as many variables as you can from the model. So the classic variables that they use are economic conditions and presidential approval. And there was one model by Peter Enns, who's a professor of government at Cornell University. He's the founder of Verisight, which is a polling company. But I think he was only using those. It was state level presidential approval, state level economic approval. Sorry, state level economic conditions. And these are the kinds of forecasts where you can say, okay, we can take this model and we can plug it back into previous elections. And he's like, this explains 94% of state results. Okay. Now, there was an even more extreme one that, it is deliberately designed to forecast results before you know who the presidential candidates actually are.
Yeah.
Once again, relies largely on economic conditions, presidential approval, but also whatever polling data is available about those candidates before the debate. Now, especially if you're going state by state, you need all kinds of fancy Bayesian imputation techniques and bootstrapping techniques, basically to fill in data where there is no data. But okay, so the first thing about all of these forecasts is, so I saw 6 different forecasts, and 4 of them went for Trump by pretty decisive margins.
Okay.
The 2 that didn't, one was the Iowa electronic market. So that's just purely using wisdom of crowds as forecasting. And the other one was an extremely strange model, which is too complicated even. This was not your minimalistic model. This was one that was too complicated to even explain here. So, okay. So that's just a way of saying, like, Nate Silver is not the only one out there who is forecasting a Trump, forecasting probability of a Trump win, even though Harris is still ahead in the polling averages. That model by Peter Enns and his co-authors suggests that Trump will get around 50 to 51% of the popular vote, and in their simulation, Trump wins 3 out of 4 times. Although he did point out that with Biden in the model, Trump was winning like 9 out of 10 times. Okay. But you might be wondering, what is the point of doing this forecast when there's all of this polling data out there? Why wouldn't you use it? Why are you, relying on these fundamentals? Okay, there is actually a point to this. And that is, these forecasters, they actually make very solid, precise predictions. They also include probabilistic elements of it, right? They say this is what the confidence interval is, or this is when we run our model, this is what happens this many times.
Yep.
But they do ultimately make solid predictions. Okay, why do they do that? Because they're scientists who want to make falsifiable models.
Yeah.
Right? They want their predictions to be able to be wrong. And as they say very openly, it's useful when they're wrong. Don't get me wrong, they don't like to be wrong. They like to be the ones who have the most accurate model. But the point is, when it's wrong, that means they can see what is wrong with their model.
Yeah.
And this actually usefully contributes to the store of human knowledge. So when you have these, because, the number of elections that have ever happened is still a fairly small sample size.
Yes.
So when you have predictions based on all of these historical factors that normally get it completely right, but in this election it goes completely wrong, that's incredibly useful. You can look at what is different about this election. There was a guy who was forecasting not the presidency, Stephen Quinlan, not the presidency, but congressional races. And he was just openly saying, I'm using a model that got it very wrong in 2022. We're going to use it again, see how accurate it is in 2024. That's going to tell us something about which of these historical factors really are deep underlying factors and which ones are completely contingent. Okay, so, and that's why they do these, heroically insane things of, I'm just going to use 2 variables and we're not going to take any data after October the year before. The whole point of it is to look at the balance of the importance of these deep underlying variables versus the importance of things that then happen in the last few months. So Peter Enns has a great article about this, saying you can use these kinds of minimalistic forecasts to actually assess the importance of campaigns and of things like variation in electoral laws.
Yep.
You can do that when you've got these forecasts. Okay, so these are forecasts that can be very wrong, that usefully contribute to the store of human knowledge. Okay, so let's come to Nate Silver now.
Yes.
Okay, now, first of all...
Actually, just before you do, can I just say about all those people you just talked about?
Yeah.
I don't put them with Alan Lichtman.
Okay, yes, yeah, no,
Okay.
no.
I have a lot of respect for the people you're talking about there, especially the fact that they're trying to seek an answer.
Yes.
Alan Lichtman saying, "I've got the answer.
Yes.
It's 100% answer.
Absolutely, yeah.
And Mercury is going to be the president."
Yes, yeah.
That's what he's saying.
Yeah. No, these are very, and especially because
Yeah.
like these people are using criteria as objective as they can get.
Yeah.
Like transparent numbers. Lichtman is making these very subjective judgment calls.
And if one of these guys in 1,000 years' time comes up with a model that's right every single time,
yes,
I will have all the respect in the world for it,
Yes.
even if Mercury could
Yes.
become president under it, because it's been done in a proper process.
Yes,
and with real reason and with real sample sizes and all the rest of it. Like, so I'm not shitting on all models that involve the fundamentals, as long as they're properly devised.
Right, yes.
Yeah, so anyway, go on.
Yeah. So Nate Silver is doing something fundamentally different because first of all, he's actually using polls. Like it is mostly based on polls with a few other factors that he's taking into account. So, but I think people do often misunderstand what he's doing, and this is partly because he's been so successful. He's got so many people hooked on checking the Silver Bulletin forecast every day when he updates it. By the way, I don't do that because I refuse to pay for the Silver Bulletin. And he's got his snide little explanations of what's going on, that, why the model might seem counterintuitive. So because of that, people tend to anthropomorphize his model, and they sort of, especially when it's not going their way, and they see it as he's just making these judgment calls, about who he thinks is going to win. That is actually not what is going on. This is, he's come up with his model. This is what his model is doing. And as far as I'm aware, he does occasionally make changes to it, but not without explaining what he's doing. Like, for example, when he started removing Kennedy from it, there's which is something that he had to do because Kennedy was, but he explained that. So, like, I will defend him on the grounds that he is, he's got a model. His model is doing certain things. I think he sometimes does get a bit too defensive about it. But, he makes these modeling decisions, like applying a convention bounce penalty and stuff like that. My problem with it is, though, okay, and once again, I've got mixed feelings about this because he always says, look, I'm giving a probabilistic estimate. Okay, what I'm giving you is a probability of what could happen. If I'm saying Trump's got a 60% chance of winning, that doesn't mean he's going to win. That means, 6 out of 10 times he would win. And I think that he does have a legitimate grievance in terms of people have read into it. If there's more than a 50% chance of something happening, then you're making a prediction that it will happen. Yeah. Which is not true. Now, the classic example of this was in the 2016 election, he gave Trump about a 30% chance of winning. Trump won, and then he got incredibly defensive about people who were saying that he got the result wrong.
Yep.
It's like, no, I said there was a 30%, that's a 1 in 3 chance. Like, there's a lot of things less probable than that.
Yeah.
And look, he gave Trump something like a 20% chance of winning in 2020. If Trump had won, it still would have been, 1 in 5, 1 in 5 chance. Okay. But here's what I don't like about that. It means there's nothing falsifiable about it.
That's true.
You do not know what the value of his model is because his model is never wrong.
That's right.
He is only ever giving probabilistic estimates. He's only ever saying that they're probabilistic estimates.
Yeah, even if it's 1% chance, that can still happen.
Exactly. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So I don't think that he's contributing to the store of human knowledge in the same way.
I agree.
We can never evaluate his model in the same way that we can evaluate these other forecasting models.
Yeah.
So, I mean, what he's doing is not wrong. It's to borrow the quip about string physics. It's not even wrong.
Yeah.
Right. It can't be wrong. It can't even qualify as something that could be wrong. So I think it's a bit pointless.
It's just entertainment, isn't it?
It is just entertainment,
Which
yes.
is what a lot of politics
That
is.
is true. That is very true. It also drives betting markets pretty impressive.
Oh, I bet it does.
Yeah. I think betting markets move in response to what Nate Silver says, which, given his most recent book about the glory of risk taking, I think he would probably like. But just to be slightly snide about it, he's not taking any risks with his model.
No.
Because his model is always right. Because it's only ever a probabilistic element in which anything can happen.
All I would say,
Yes.
I know these are like the 2%. When his model changes 2% or 3%.
Yes. Yeah.
We're conditioned to think of that like a poll, so it
Yes,
seems like a big
yes,
movement.
yeah.
When actually it's not.
No.
It's a difference between 52% chance, 54% chance. That's almost nothing.
And to his credit, that's what he says.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
But the fact that in like a week, his poll can go up or down 10%.
Yeah.
With almost nothing happening.
Yes.
Makes me think that that makes me not trust it very much.
Right, yes.
I
No,
have to say.
I don't trust his model very much at all because a couple of days ago, it had Trump's winning probability at only like 4 or 5 points less than what it had been just before Biden dropped out of the race.
Yeah.
This just does not seem to be a similar set of circumstances. But once again, it can never be falsified.
Yeah, no, you're right. Absolutely right.
Because it's never wrong.
I should say, if Nate Silver was here, he'd probably say the reason for that was because just before Biden dropped out was 2 months ago.
Mm.
And the closer you get to the actual election, the larger the amplitude and the variations go because a lot can happen over time. So when you're measuring back from May or from March or whatever, there'll be smaller changes in the probabilities. I imagine he'd say, but you're right, completely unfalsifiable.
Yes.
Yeah, no, that's a good call.
Yeah. So no risk taking, and I haven't read his book. I don't really intend to. But yeah. From what I've read, it sounds like this glorification of risk taking, which he is not doing. He's got a very stable business model of hate reading.
He does.
Yeah, which in many ways is a lot cleverer than the kind of risk taking that he's glorifying. So hats off to him.
Something I said on Play America that I didn't say on PEP, so I should say on PEP for those who don't watch Play America, is for those who are a little bit obsessed with his numbers, which he puts up on Twitter every now and then, and they're looking at Trump being ahead by 60% to 40% before the debate.
Yes.
Nate Silver has explicitly said you should disregard those numbers.
Yes.
He's explicitly said there was this, he put in there into the model that there would be a bounce after the convention, and there wasn't a bounce.
Yeah.
So the model is thinking that Kamala Harris's numbers are going to drop down over the next 2 weeks.
Yes.
As the inverted commas bounce from the convention dissipates.
Yes.
And so he said, just disregard my model essentially for another 2 weeks until the bounce has moved out of it.
Yeah.
So you should just be aware of that even right now, Nate Silver is saying my model is probably not right.
Yes.
That's good stuff. Now, Dave, given I know you got to go soonish.
Yes.
There were a couple of other things you wanted to talk about. Do you want to just go into them or not? It's up to you.
No, I really need to give those things more time. Well, actually,
okay, it's all right.
I need to give
they'll hold for next week.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Need to give it more time. Sorry.
Okay. All right. So what I might do then here, let me just talk about. There's a few. Let me just talk about where the polls are vaguely at.
Yes. Yep.
Before the debate.
Okay.
Because obviously in another week's time, we'll have new polls.
Yes.
And there'll be a whole new world, presumably. So let's just see where we've left it before the debate. Okay, so what we've been seeing, broadly speaking, up to this week, is that the race has been returning to what we might call normal, where the in the high quality polls, Biden was tied with Trump amongst young voters before he dropped out.
Yes,
which was a little strange. And what's happened since then is Harris now leads by an average of about 20 points amongst young voters, which is a bit more what you expect. In fact, some polls have her ahead by 32 points amongst young voters. So compared to Biden, the non-white voters under the age of 45, Harris has got 17 points more of them.
Yes.
On average. Women under the age of 45, Harris has got 16 points more of them. Like she's up to Democrat plus 26. So she's 26 points above Trump in that regard. In terms of regular TikTok users, now they've moved up 15 points to now Democrat plus 18 compared to Trump. Oh, yeah, and the non-white under the age of 45, it's Democrat plus 24 compared to Trump. So that's getting a bit more to regular transmission.
Yes.
In terms of, if you look at the exact non-white numbers, interesting, if we compare just New York Times Siena polls, New York Times Siena poll from September 2020, so this time in 2020, Trump had 7% of the black vote.
Wow.
Back then. When in June 2024, just before Joe Biden dropped out, he had 30% of the black vote.
Yeah.
Now, September 2024, he's got 17% of the black vote. So we're kind of in between 2020 and when Biden dropped out. For Latino voters, back in 2020, Trump had 31% of the Latino vote in September. Just before Biden dropped out, he had 44% of the Latino vote, and now he's got 42% of Latino vote. So that's pretty much where Biden was. It hasn't changed that much. But interestingly, Harris hasn't lost the older voters.
No.
Like it seemed like might be a threat.
Yes.
She, in Fairleigh Dickinson, for instance, got a 7-point lead amongst seniors. In Suffolk University and seniors, she's got an 11-point lead over Trump amongst seniors. So at least so far, she's holding largely Joe Biden's advantage in old people. And if that holds the whole way, then that's good for Harris.
Yes.
Another thing, her favorability is now above water as far as Real Clear Politics goes.
Yep.
She's up by 0.8 in Real Clear Politics. 538, she's still just underwater, minus 0.8.
Yep.
But that's come a long way from about 20 points underwater.
Yeah.
And it's still moving up. Democratic excitement across the board has gone very high. Enthusiasm, 78%, according to Gallup, say they're more enthusiastic than usual to vote.
Yep.
64% of Republicans say that.
Yes.
So that's a big advantage for Democrats. That's the second highest enthusiasm for the Democrats this century.
Yeah.
I'll put the graph up so you can have a look at that. The only time it was higher was February 2008 when Obama momentum was taking on Hillary momentum.
Yep.
So there was excitement. After that, the enthusiasm for Obama when he was the actual nominee was lower than it currently is for Harris at the moment.
Yeah.
So that's pretty extraordinary. It was 79% at the peak of Obama momentum in February 2008. The Democrats at 78% enthusiasm, they had 55% back in March. The Republicans are now 64%. They were 59% back in March. They basically haven't moved. Enthusiasm has never been above 70% for Republicans this century. Never.
Yeah.
And it's 78% for Democrats right now. So that's an advantage for Harris.
Yes.
Another advantage for Harris is that she's making ground on the issues. The most important issues, according to the ABC News Washington Post 2 weeks ago, economy, 89%, immigration, 86%. These are people who say it's the most important issue.
Yep.
Republicans are ahead by 9 points in the economy, 10 points on immigration. Abortion was 77% said it was the most important issue. Democrats ahead by 12. Healthcare, 77% says the most important issue. Democrats plus 7. I think they must have, looking at this, they had to have declared more than one issue as the most important issue.
Yep.
Otherwise, that wouldn't make sense. Gun violence, 76%. Democrats plus 5. Gaza, 65%. Republicans plus 5. Crime, 63%. Republicans plus 3. Democracy, 59%. Democracy plus Democrats plus 6. So the two biggest issues were comfortable Republican issues.
Yeah.
Now, a number of polls have seen two things. Firstly, abortion's been edging up in importance since Harris took over.
Yep.
To the point now where, at least according to New York Siena polls, abortion is now the most important issue for women under 45. More important than the economy.
Yeah.
So that's interesting.
That's pre-debate.
Yeah, that's pre-debate. Exactly. Yeah,
Yes.
especially given your point.
Yeah.
And for women overall, Economy is at 24%, say it's the most important issue for women. Abortion, 22%. So it's only just below economy for all women.
Yeah.
And that's been underneath Harris. Like Biden, they were much lower than that. So she's made it a bigger issue. Not just that, she's getting a bigger slice of the issue as well. And also on top of that, she is closing the gap on the economy and immigration. It was 14 points behind. Biden was 14 points behind Trump in June on the economy. Now he's 6 points behind. Now she is 6 points behind.
Yes.
On immigration, Biden was 13 points behind. Now Harris is 3 points behind. This is on the USAT poll.
Yes.
Right. So these are the broad trends basically. And overall, what's happening is Harris kind of jumped ahead for a little while there.
Yep.
And now it's almost exactly 50-50. In the swing states, they're basically just
50-50.
tied
Yes.
all along the way. It's tightened up really. In fact, according to New York Times Siena, there is literally, in the era of modern polling, there has never been an election where the final polls showed the race as close as it is right now.
Yes.
Not 2000.
Yes.
Not 2004, not 2012, not 2016. I mean, 2000 was a pretty close election.
Yeah.
But all 7 swing states are within 2 points.
Yes.
All 7 at the moment. So that's where we're at now. It's exactly 50-50.
I just want to make a couple of observations.
Yes.
One is that, Harris got out quite a bit. It's now coming back.
Yeah.
That's been widely interpreted as buzz or bounce wearing off.
Yeah.
I'm not sure it is because her favorability keeps rising.
It does.
I think it's Kennedy getting out.
Yeah.
I think Kennedy getting out has had a huge effect, especially because there are still 2 candidates in the race who are taking a couple of points off Harris in every poll, which is Stein and West.
Yeah.
Chase Oliver, I'm not sure who they're taking them from. Possibly no one. That New York Times Siena poll showed Chase Oliver getting 2 and Stein getting 2. So that I've got to imagine is hurting is hurting Harris. Second thing is that New York Times Siena poll that had Trump ahead. One of the really interesting things about that poll that made it different from other polls was that it showed both Harris and Trump with 46% favorability. Whereas when you look at that 538 favorability average, as you see, Harris is only down by 0.8%, whereas Trump's down by 9.8%.
Yeah.
So there are 2 ways of interpreting that Siena poll. One is that they've got an unusually Trump-skewed sample, which I'm sure is what a lot of Democrats have been saying about the New York Times Siena poll for the last year. The other one is maybe because they're using, phones or whatever other sampling methods they're using, they're the ones who've actually cracked the code of how to reach these low-propensity Trump voters. Don't know which one it is.
On that note,
yes,
on the New York Times Siena poll, even though Trump is up by 1, amongst those almost certain to vote, Harris was up by 2.
Ah, okay.
So when you're talking about high propensity voters versus low propensity voters, Harris is still owning the high propensity voters.
Yes. All right, I've got to go, everyone. Enjoy policy time.
Yes. You're going to hear these sounds right after. In fact, let's carry it across the white flash. Stay peppy, Dave.
Stay peppy.
See you on the other side of the white flash. Welcome to the other side of the white flash. It's now early Saturday morning and a few things have become clear. Firstly, I misplaced my Stings card, so I'm going to have to roll this in manually. Also, there is way too much left over to cover in 33 minutes, so I'm going to have to organise a catch-up pod, I think, with El Hardy. Maybe this week, maybe next, hopefully this week. In the meantime, I'll try and tidy up some odds and ends and do a little bit of policy time as well. I did just play the sting. Firstly, some debate stuff. I want to clear up a little bit more with the debate because we'll be moving on from this, obviously, after this week. With respect to the moderators, and I'm obsessed with the moderators, with the 9-month abortion fact check I talked about during the podcast. We talked a fair bit about that one. Dave made the point that Trump's talking point was particularly unfair on Tim Walz. So I decided to look that up. And I've got to say, what I found makes the fact check in that regard look a little bit worse. According to the Minnesota Department of Health, in 2019, 3 abortions led to a live birth. One had the baby been pre-viable, one had fetal abnormalities, one it wasn't clear what happened. All 3 were not resuscitated in exactly the same way that Ralph Northam said in that clip I played you before. In 2020, no abortions in Minnesota that led to a live birth. 2021, there were 5 abortions that led to a live birth. 2 of those babies were considered pre-viable again. One had fetal abnormalities, 2 not clear what happened. All 5 were not resuscitated in exactly the way that Ralph Northam said in that video we played. We don't know what's happened from 2023 onwards because legislation signed by Tim Walz removed the requirement to report those figures. Also, the legal standards of care for babies in this scenario was actually watered down a little bit by that legislation. So once again, I want to emphasize that the way Trump described all this as execution and his bloodthirsty imagery, way over the top, like completely misleading. We're talking about babies that are non-viable or have some kind of serious abnormalities here. This is obviously a heartbreaking process for the mother. It shouldn't be taken lightly, certainly not the way Trump takes them, those cases. But if Lindsay Davis wanted to explain all that, sure, go for it. I don't think that was really her role as a moderator. But either way, I think her fact check was generally not accurate enough. Once again, grey area. And also now I'd say it's not really accurate with respect to Tim Walz as well. I think Tim Walz definitely falls in the Ralph Northam end of the spectrum. But once again, I'm not condemning him. I'm on their side as far as the policy issue goes, but I just think the fact check was too grey. By contrast, I may have been too eager to criticise the moderators in one other respect. That was pointed out to me by a Pepper. I'm sorry I lost your name in the rush here at 7 a.m. or whatever. I said that if the moderators were going to fact check, I said in the pod that they really should have fact checked Harris for her suggestion that couples couldn't get IVF because of Trump's abortion bans, which was horrendously inaccurate. But the Pepper noted that Lindsay Davis appeared to be about to say something which might have been a fact check when Trump came over the top. Here, you have a listen and see what we mean.
The people of America have voted for freedom.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie. It's another lie.
So you can hear that Lindsay Davis was just going back to Harris. Harris had just answered the question. She probably wasn't going to go back to ask her another one straight after she'd answered one. She was probably going there for a fact check, maybe. It had a fact-checky tone to it, what she said. You can rewind and listen again if you want.
Vice President Harris,
Excuse me, I
thank
have
you.
to respond. Another lie.
I think we should give her the benefit of the doubt because it did sound kind of fact-checky and then Trump just came over the top and she let him come over the top because presumably she thought Trump was going to do the fact-check for her, but he didn't do a very good job. By contrast, there was another fact check that they really should have issued for Harris in hindsight. Harris said this.
And as of today, there is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world, the first time this century.
Now, that's a big call, and it wasn't a little aside. It was a major selling point for Harris when defending the administration's Afghanistan record. So that's an important point from her, and it was flat out not true. It just so happens that phrases like active war zone have an actual definition. You're dealing with military definitions now because soldiers' pay, benefits, awards, they all change when you're in a combat zone. Now, right now, there are US troops in active war zones in Syria, Yemen, Iraq, and Libya. And it's not a small number of troops either. In Iraq, there are 2,500 troops, and hundreds more in Syria. It goes on. The US Navy engagement against Houthi fighters in the Red Sea at the moment, that's considered the Navy's most intense combat since World War II. These are active war zones. And the reason that this was such a bad miss from the moderators was because I want to read you that claim one more time now. There is not one member of the United States military who is in active duty in a combat zone in any war zone around the world the first time this century. Well, earlier this year, 3 reservists died in one of those war zones in Syria after a drone attack. Now, remember exactly why they're even talking about the Afghanistan thing. It's largely because of the 13 Afghanistan Gold Star parents who have made such a big fuss out of their children's death. Now, they're really mad at Biden and Harris. Why are they so mad? They say that their children's death has been forgotten and ignored. That is kind of what Harris did right there to these 3 other dead troops by acting like their unit's deployment doesn't even exist. That was the implication of her saying, no, there are no troops at all in active war zones. And so I could see their parents being extremely annoyed by that statement. And I think it's worthy of a fact check, I would have thought, because it's also an important point where she was extremely misleading. And I should say, just to be clear, I've sat in the moderator's seat before. It's tough. Live fact checks suck. They're a nightmare. They're so easy to get just slightly wrong. One word that's just not precise just screws you as a fact checker. But that's exactly why I say you shouldn't do it unless you feel you absolutely have to and you know you've got the goods. If you move into areas of grey, you're screwing yourself both ways, both with the people you're fact-checking and the people you're not fact-checking. And I felt they were just a bit fact-check happy on this particular debate night against one side in particular. To contrast, though, I've said enough about them. There is one section where I'll move off the fact checks now, with the fact they did have a fact check, and it was certainly correct. And I want to talk about that section, not about the fact checker, though. I'm talking about this bit right here.
Mr. President, for 3.5 years after you lost the 2020 election, you repeatedly falsely claimed that you won, many times saying you won in a landslide. In the past couple of weeks leading up to this debate, you have said, quote, you lost by a whisker, that you, quote, didn't quite make it, that you came up a little bit short.
I said that?
Are you now acknowledging that you lost in 2020?
No, I don't acknowledge that at all.
But
I
you
said
did
that
say
sarcastically. You know that. It was said, oh, we lost by a whisker. That was said sarcastically.
And David Muir later suggested he didn't register the sarcasm. And I think it's worth looking at the interview that Trump was referring to there so you can make up your own mind about whether it was sarcastic or not. It was in this interview with Lex Friedman that we actually spoke about last week on PEP. Is this bit here?
I became president. Then the second time I got millions more votes than I got the first time. So I was told if I got 63 million, which is what I got the first time, you would win. You can't not win. And I got millions of more votes than that and lost by a whisker. And look what happened to the world with all of the wars and all of the problems.
Okay, you make up your own mind. I think it was obviously not sarcastic, but I wanted to explain what was going on there. Trump has been gradually dropping the charade a bit recently about 2020, but that's created some unpredictable consequences. There's a guy called Nick Fuentes who is a legitimate white supremacist. I know the phrase gets thrown around a lot. This guy is 100% a white supremacist. He's a pretty nasty individual, but he's also one of Trump's most rabid supporters for the last 8 years. And this is what he had to say about that exact clip.
If he admits that he lost, then that actually vindicates the DOJ charge against him. Because the charge is that he knew he lost, but he lied to defraud the people. That's the DOJ's charge. So why did we do Stop the Steal? Why did anyone go to January 6th? Why is anyone sitting in jail? Why did anything bad happen to anybody? Why did everyone get censored? Why is everything bad that has happened to the people that are involved, why did that need to happen if you're just going to walk it all back and say, oh, I lost? Well, it would have been good to know that before 1,600 people got charged. It would have been good to know that before I had all my money frozen, put on a no-fly list, banned from everything, lost all banking and payment processing.
He's right. It would have been good for him to know that. This is something at least I kind of forgot about. I'm not sure about you. I forgot it because I'm so used to not believing Trump. But his supporters do believe him. When he goes on with his crap, they do believe him. And many of them have sacrificed large parts of their lives to fight for him because they do believe him. So now he's in a position where Trump can't walk away from the election denialism because these people have relied on that election denialism and they could swing hard against Trump if they feel like he betrayed them because his stubbornness actually ruined many of their lives. They can't just let it go and move on like he can. It hasn't hurt him, but it hurt them. And these guys are his base as well. He can't lose them. So Trump's kind of trapped now. He has to continue the denial at least to the election campaign, even if it looks awful in debates. And no matter how awful it looks, he can't afford to allow his base to think he betrayed them. Otherwise, it is over for Trump. And by the way, Harris might be able to exploit that if she wants. It's a real opportunity for her there. Trump cannot back away from that. That's the only thing he cannot back away from. Talk about disappointing your base. Something went unremarked upon. We're used to Harris talking tough about immigration the last few months, but debate night, I should note, was the first time we've ever seen Harris not even give lip service to the idea that immigration can be a positive. There was no mention of her immigrant parents, no mention of Trump's immigrant background, no mention of the fact that immigrants are carrying the US economy on their shoulders right now. There was nothing positive at all. Just watch me crack some heads. I'll crack down harder than Trump will on immigrants was the vibe. And I suspect that there's only so much of that Harris's base will accept. That's not their message at all. I'm not saying there's going to be a revolt. They're way too keen to get rid of Trump. But if Harris doesn't watch out, she could encourage dissent from the left before Election Day. She's already got a sore area with Gaza. If she adds immigration to that as well, it's starting to add up. So I just wanted to note that. Finally, I want to make one more point about the cats and dogs part, which we talked about so much. Conservative Talkback host Eric Erickson tweeted this a bit out angrily after Trump made a fool of himself going on about eating dogs and cats and pets. He tweeted out in all caps, "You stupid motherfuckers just got Trump to repeat your lie about the pets. Congrats on setting the news stories tomorrow by lying so Trump picks it up and says stupid shit." So he was blaming the online right for convincing Trump to self-harm in the debate. Now, I think Eric Erickson was right to recognise the danger there and to recognise how it happened. But Trump did just copy the online right. This wasn't Trump's lie. This came from the online right. But Erickson needs to recognise an important point here, which I think we should all realise. No one made Trump do anything. This is who he is. Listen to Trump the next day on Fox News.
They had a rigged show with somebody that maybe even had the answers. I mean, I'll be honest. I watched her talk, and I said, she seems awfully familiar with the questions, and you get pretty good at that stuff after a while. But when I saw how totally rigged that was.
So wildly speculating about a conspiracy with no evidence whatsoever other than Harris seemed prepared, that's who he is. And this is why MAGA fans love him so much. He does exactly what they would do in his position. They've been talking about the cats and dogs for days. This has been the major topic of conversation on Twitter amongst the right. They would talk about the cats and the pets eating on the debate stage for sure, 100%. And they would talk about it in exactly the way Trump did, because Trump is them. He is exactly as gullible and delusional and desperate as they are. This is how he is honest. Yes, he lies a lot, but he is honest about who he is. When he acts like he's them, he is them, and they know it. And Eric Erickson, he's not them. Other Republicans are not them. Only Trump is them. And that's why they're never going to quit Trump. if they can possibly support him, they will, because they know deep in their bones they are never going to find another representative who actually represents them. Doesn't act like they represent them, but actually 100% with all their heart represents these guys. The problem for the Twitter political unit out there is not that JD Vance is weird, it's that they are weird. They're the weird ones. That is the problem. And every time their views are exposed to the mainstream, it backfires, which is a hard problem to solve. And they know it backfires as well. And they know that that's why they are unlikely to find another person like Trump who is them and who is kind of successful as well while being them. And so they're going to hold on to him for as long as they can because they know as soon as he goes, the party's over for them. They're going to have to go back to the fakes and the frauds and the people who are sucking up to them, but behind the scenes, slag them off. Not that I'm saying Trump doesn't slag them off behind the scenes. I don't know what he says behind the scenes, but I know he is them. Okay, enough about the debate. Let's get a... It's not as good when I play it in here rather than live, isn't it? Anyway. I've only got time for one of them. There's going to be a lot more policy time with Elle. That's going to be a point of the catch-up. This is about US Steel. This is one more policy where Kamala Harris seems to have co-opted the Trump campaign. Although, to be fair, this wasn't a complete policy theft. It's one more policy where they've kind of converged for some time. Well, Biden and Trump have converged for some time, and now Kamala Harris is following Biden's footsteps. US Steel was the world's largest company over 100 years ago. It used to be massive, but today it's the world's 27th largest steel company. It dropped out of the S&P 500 in 2014, and it just keeps on shrinking. It just keeps on shedding workers all the time. Today it employs fewer people than Petco, okay? It's a shadow of its former self. Japanese steel giant Nippon Steel is the fourth largest steel company in the world by contrast, and it's on the way up. It has placed a $15 billion proposal to acquire US Steel. That's about 40% more than the company's currently worth. And it's $8 billion more than the next best offer. So that's a generous proposal. US Steel shareholders, they're pretty keen on it. 98% of US Steel shareholders support or shares supported the acquisition. And Nippon is promised to invest $2.7 billion in revamping US steel plants. So they are going to become much more competitive in future and maybe grow. So what's the problem with this? Sounds like a win-win. Okay, let me go through a couple of the theoretical problems. Number one, and another iconic American companies moving overseas. US Steel and Nippon, they're both publicly traded companies, okay? The whole iconic American company, it doesn't count when it's a publicly traded company because it means that foreign-owned and domestic-owned concepts are anachronistic. Anyone can be a shareholder. So, for instance, as of September 30, nearly a quarter of Nippon Steel's shareholders were from outside Japan. So the lines are blurry about domestically owned and foreign-owned when you're a publicly traded company. That's the first thing. But the next argument is, it's going to sacrifice jobs. Nippon are going to sacrifice jobs, especially Pennsylvanian jobs, because US Steel is located in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. That might be starting to give you some idea what the problems with this deal are. And it's true, the HQ is in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, but the deal retains US Steel's name and location in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Nippon want US Steel to stay in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And by the way, US Steel has said without this deal, they're not going to have the money to stay there. They're saying they're going to move south. So if they don't get the deal, the jobs are going to move out of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. People have conveniently ignored that. By the way, there are 3,700 workers in Pittsburgh for US Steel. A number of them support the deal as well because they want the company to thrive and stay in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. And even if they didn't, I reckon the 550,000 people compared to the 3,700 who work in US Steel. The 550,000 people in Pennsylvania who work in manufacturing, which usually involves some kind of steel, I think they would be happy about US Steel being more efficient and cheaper and more resilient through this deal. That's going to help the much larger number of manufacturers in Pennsylvania for sure. So the deal is good for a lot of workers in Pennsylvania. But let's leave that to one side for a second. How about national security concerns? This is the big one. This is the one that everyone who's against this deal cites. Look, Japan is one of America's closest and most important allies, especially in the battle against China. Japan is also America's largest source of foreign investment. It's a fruitful partnership that's been going for some time, Japan and America. In fact, they're so close, America and Japan, that America is treaty bound to defend Japan if it's attacked. If Japan's attacked. So Japan can't afford to betray America in a war. If we're worried about national security concerns, Japan is tied to America. It's stuck with super glue. They can't get away from America. There are 55,000 American troops currently stationed in Japan. If America can't trust Japan, then what are those troops doing there? It doesn't make any sense. Japan is a very good ally of America. I mean, look, the whole argument's bullshit anyway. Let's say Japan was unreliable, which it's obviously not. In 2017, Jim Mattis estimated that the defense needs for steel in America were only 3% of domestic production. Even if US Steel just disappeared tomorrow, the US would still easily have production capacity to handle its domestic defensive needs. And even if America couldn't supply enough steel for its defensive, for the Pentagon, their largest foreign suppliers of steel are Canada and Mexico. So America's steel supply chain is safe in a war. There are no national security concerns here. Also, as a little aside, the steel that the Pentagon needs is the steel for armoured plates for Navy ships and Army ground vehicles, which aren't made by US Steel. So this is irrelevant to defence concerns anyway. And as another aside, an aside from aside, if you will, modernising US Steel like Nippon wants to do could benefit US national security by producing a stronger firm that can handle America's defence needs better, especially in the future. You need better technology to deal with the future. During the War on Terror, the Pentagon actually bought a lot of their steel from Sweden and Germany and Israel and Australia because their domestic industry was too inefficient and expensive. And Nippon's trying to fix that. So these national security grounds are super fake and a huge pretext. Okay, how about economic concerns? Well, like I said, Nippon Steel wants to invest billions of dollars to help US Steel modernize and thrive. I can't see what the economic concerns could possibly be. All right, well, let's go through some of the reactions then. The local politicians have been beating this drum for ages. John Fetterman in Pennsylvania. Sherrod Brown in Ohio. That's interesting. We'll come back to that. J.D. Vance in Ohio. That's interesting. We'll come back to that. Marco Rubio in Florida. I don't know what's going on with him. And Josh Hawley, well, he's just wherever he can be populist, that's where Josh Hawley is. They are the biggest attackers of this deal in the Senate. Back in January, Trump said he joined that team. That team had been going the whole time. Back in January, Trump said he would block the sale. Then the Biden administration started sniffing around. They ordered the Committee on Foreign Investment and also they ordered the Justice Department to investigate the deal on security and antitrust grounds, which is interesting. Now, last week there were reports that Biden is preparing to announce that he will formally block the deal. We'll see about that soon. But also, last week, Kamala Harris announced she wanted to keep US Steel under American ownership. Guess where she made that announcement? Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. What a surprise. She said, US Steel is an historic American company and it's vital for our nation to maintain strong American steel companies. US Steel should remain American-owned and American-operated. And I should spare a moment to talk about J.D. Vance because he has been a huge impediment. He wrote to the SEC, that's the Securities and Exchange Commission, asking them to review the information that US Steel provided its shareholders when they approved the deal. He said that they misled their shareholders about how hard it was going to be to get the deal approved. And the reason he says it'll be so hard to get the deal approved is because, well, he's trying to stop them. So this seems a little dubious. He's saying the SEC should interfere because US Steel didn't emphasize how much Vance was going to try and get the SEC to interfere. A little bit circular, a little bit hypocritical as well, because in his book, he wrote about how Japanese firm Kawasaki saved Armco, who were the major employer in his hometown. He said at the time, if companies like Armco were going to survive, they would have to retool. Kawasaki gave Armco a chance, and Middletown's flagship company probably would not have survived without it. Okay, so why is he being such a hypocrite? What's his motivation? There's been one other bid. It's not just Nippon. Nippon's bid is the biggest bid by a mile. But there's been one other bid by a much smaller steel company from America. They're called Cleveland Cliffs, and guess where they're based? They're based in Ohio. Those Ohio senators suddenly make sense, don't they? That's obviously J.D. Vance's home state as well, Show Brown's as well. So he's trying to protect the shareholders while trying to get the shareholders a worse deal by getting the Ohio company to buy them instead. By the way, Cleveland Cliffs has been playing up the national security concerns as much as they possibly can, and also xenophobia to try and sink the bid. Their CEO famously said that Japan is not a friend of America. Oh, come on. All right, why is everyone else against it? To be honest, I don't know, because they're all using bullshit pretexts. Like they often talk about national security. And you go, well, that's not that's not a real argument. On the surface, I'm guessing it's just a nice panda. This is all based around Pennsylvania, isn't it? Now, I know that in reality, this is not going to help Pennsylvanians at all if they kill the deal, but on the surface, it looks like a great panda. And that's where elections are conducted, on the surface. I should say, the pandas don't always work. George W. Bush passed damaging steel tariffs to pander to Pennsylvania, still lost in 2004 in Pennsylvania anyway. There's also, it's not just the panda, there's also the union. The United Steelworkers Union is a powerful union, and they're against this deal. Even though the deal leaves the existing labour contract in place with American workers, Nippon are going to honour their contracts. Nippon worked with the union. They promised no layoffs to hourly workers at least through the end of 2026. I guess the union doesn't trust them for past 2026. And yes, it's true, modernising is often a euphemism for less workers. But if the company grows, they might have more workers, even if they're modernised. And also, the way US Steel is going, if they don't modernise, there may be no workers soon. Like, they're really starting to tank it. The union may also be interested. I'm just trying to read minds here. This might not be true, but I'm trying to think of what might be going on. The union might want US Steel to do a deal with Cleveland Cliffs. They are supporting the Cleveland Cliffs deal. So they can create a monopoly, which they can then exploit, because the Cleveland Cliffs US Steel combined entity would control 100% of US blast furnace production, 100% of domestic steel used in electric vehicle motors, 65% to 90% of other domestic steel used in vehicles as well. That monopoly and pseudo-monopoly could hide behind their enormous steel tariffs that both parties are favouring right now to produce an inefficient but highly profitable domestic steel cartel. That would not be good news for America's auto industry, though, especially EVs, because it's not just the steel on the car panels, but also the steel in the motors as well that go to EVs. So America's already got problems being competitive with EVs. That might make it impossible for American EVs to be competitive, which is why tariffs suck. I know I'm very anti-tariff, but they encourage this kind of bizarre incentives to create uncompetitive behaviour. Anyway, so I'm just about out of time. I'm about a minute or two short, so I won't start another policy time. I've got so many more. But that's the reason. That's what's going on about the Kamala Harris and Trump policies on US Steel. Bottom line, there is no choice here. They're just agreed with each other. They're going for the populist take, which in my view is the dumb take, which is to smash the deal. So guess we'll see what happens to US Steel in the future. Anyway, I'm going to try and organise another PEP soon to deal with a lot more policy time and a lot of other stuff which we haven't had time for. So I may see you early this week, next week. I may see you on Friday. One of the two. See you next week sometime. Till then, stay peppy.